Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I'm here with Michael.
Hello, everybody.
And Jason.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
You fucking chocolate all over me.
That's because you just ate a peanut butter cup right before we started recording.
Everywhere.
You're still on with this.
You slob.
I'm good.
Now drink your beer and eat your...
It is a weird combo.
Yeah.
I kind of like it, though.
Eat your candy and drink your beer while we try to do the show.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone has any expectations from me, they've not listened to the first 10 episodes or however many we've done now.
It's more than 10. It's like 20-something.
I don't know.
I think we're in the 30.
Oh, shit.
Bumping there now.
Look at us.
Are we?
Yeah. Yeah, getting there. This is like 29, I want to say.
And I thought we were done 10.
I mean, technically, if you count the bonus episodes, too, we're already beyond 30. But,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah. Why am I here? Because I'm the only one who knows how to work the computer.
So today we are continuing our odyssey into westerns. With Jason's pick, he has brought to the table 2016's Brimstone.
Jason's blind pick.
Blind pick.
I would like to emphasize that. I had not seen this movie before I said, hey, let's watch Brimstone.
And that may be a hint as to the future of our discussions on this film. First, we're going to do all the usual stuff. I got a podcast shout out. We're going to talk about what we've watched. But, Michael, I think we need to drop like a trigger warning about this film now that we've all seen it. If you're listening to this episode and you're thinking you might go try this film to watch it, there's probably some content you should be aware of before you check it out.
Yeah, there's some child harm in here. And honestly, like, the child harm's in there, but what I would probably warn people about the most is if you've ever been in an abusive relationship, like physically abusive, this could be really hard to watch. That's, for me, that was kind of up there. Like, when the child harm happened, I was like, whoa, okay. But yeah, some of the other stuff, though, I think just overall tone, if you're dealing with that in your life, that listen to us bitch about it, but don't watch it.
And like I always say, like, we're very against any kind of censorship in any way, so this isn't like an indictment of the film as much as just to say, like, know yourself and know what you're comfortable with.
Don't put yourself in a situation where you watch something that's going to upset you just because 3 dudes in a basement told you it was okay. Because we don't know shit.
Yeah, so know yourself, know your limits, know what you like to watch.
Exactly.
And know your role.
And be aware of the trickier content of this film if you're going to go in. It made me think a lot about, like, The Nightingale.
Yeah.
In that same vein of, like, there's just some heavy-hitting stuff in there. All right, so we are part of the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, and we're super excited about that. We're under no compulsion to shout out any other podcasts, but I just want to. So I've been combing through the long list of shows on our network and checking them out, and this is kind of just following along the last one we covered. I checked out Attack of the Killer Podcast, which is kind of our flagship show, I guess. It's the first one that started everything.
Cool.
So kind of just their top-level description. It's a group of friends that love to talk about all things horror movie related and everything they love in the genre. There's several hosts, and each episode is usually they'll have a specific topic. It might be a genre. It might be like a kind of horror film or a certain topic or a theme. And they'll have just a candid conversation, discuss that, break it down, and usually take like 2 or 3 films and cover those like more like a broad top level thing to just like look at that topic or idea in that way.
Nice.
It's super fun. If you enjoyed the Cracktastic Plastic podcast that I talked about last time, the Jason guy that's in that one, he's also on this show. So that's a cool like carryover connection between the two. The one I checked out was about folk horror, because I thought, oh, that's cool. I like folk horror. I've got that Severin box set. I'm still waiting to get into it. And it was pretty fun. It's an easy listen if you enjoy what we're doing at all. They kind of do the same thing of, like, they start off and they kind of talk about what they've been watching, that kind of stuff. Then they, like, go into, like, the deeper topic.
So you're saying they went into the future, ripped us off, went back in time.
Well, 2 things about that. First of all, they are the first of this network, and they're like 250 some episodes in, so
We're only 10.
they,
Right.
number 1, they beat us. Number 2, our format's kind of a common format for film podcasts, I think.
No, I think time travel is at fault here.
And from what you've told me, they also don't spiral into madness of perseverating over every little detail of the film.
No, yes, we're more of like a deep dive, so we drive ourselves crazy going as far as we can with one film at a time.
Crazier.
It was super fun. They have a lot of cool bumps and like little audio transitions.
That's cool.
They play like the trailers of the films they talked about, which I know is something that we dabbled in, but we kind of like it to be cleaner and just.
There's also a little bit of legality things there. If we ever hawked you some shit, like buy our shit.
They're super fun, and it really like as they say, it is a group of friends, and it has that like same like fun friend vibe where if you just want to like sit and feel like you're part of a conversation where it's just dudes that love horror films chatting about it, it's got that vibe.
Cool. I'll check it out.
So check them out. Super fun. Attack of the Killer podcast.
Awesome.
I love their name.
That's a good name.
Great name. Perfect name.
I grew up on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Return of the Killer Tomatoes.
Love them. Love them. I love any podcast I think that kind of does that riff on a title.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
like
so
Love Exposure.
yeah, like us. So what have you guys been watching?
I can go.
Yeah, why don't you go?
I kind of liked mine.
Good.
It's not going to be relevant by the time this airs, but it's very relevant right now. I watched Del Toro's new one, Nightmare Alley.
No, I wasn't.
It's beautiful. I mean, that's to be expected,
that's a
though,
given.
with any Del Toro film. I've never read the source material. Like, I've not read the book, and I've not seen the 47, I think it's 1947, Nightmare Alley.
I haven't
Something
either.
thereabouts, yeah.
I've not seen that, so I don't really have anything to draw a comparison to say, like, as far as, what's better, what's not. I was initially kind of, like, I really wanted to watch it because I love Del Toro. Even his worst movies are better than a lot of movies. Don't shake your head.
What movie are you even thinking of?
I really never cared for that Blade movie.
Yeah. I think that's the best of the Blades because it did its own thing.
Obviously, we're a fan of them in period, but I mean, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I like
a lot of people rip on Crimson Peak, and I really like Crimson Peak.
I think it was just marketed bad. Was the problem because they marketed it like a horror film, but really it's more of like a gothic romance.
Yeah, it really is.
And that sort of like swerved a lot of people, I think.
One of the things that put me off about this that I was initially not super excited about is I'm not a huge Bradley Cooper fan. He's a good actor, but sometimes like he's too much.
I get that.
It's like it's hard to watch a Leonardo DiCaprio movie because you're always watching Leonardo DiCaprio. No matter what character he's gone into, it's like usually pretty evident that it's still him. And Bradley Cooper's kind of the same way. Like he disappeared into the role of A Star Is Born, but you still knew it's Bradley Cooper. The only one that honestly I feel like I never remember it's Bradley Cooper is when he's Rocket Raccoon.
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah.
I just
You're not seeing his mug.
Yeah, I always forget.
His handsomely chiseled face.
But the cast in this is phenomenal. Like everybody is in it. Defoe is in it.
Nice.
Ron Perlman has a role. Rooney Mara's.
Of course he does.
Yeah, Rooney Mara's amazing in it. I mean, she's great in like everything she does. But
I've heard in the wake of this too, they've kind of been swirling on the like Hellboy 3 maybe finally.
oh God, I hope so. I'd love it, but I don't know if it'll happen after Neil Marshall's
I never got into those either.
debacle.
Oh, I love the comics, but that's a whole other story.
I'm not going to say that this is great. I did not like it as much as his others. Honestly, this might be my least favorite of his movies, but I still liked it. I still thought it was good. It's beautifully shot. Everyone who's in it acted the hell out of it. Kate Blanchett's in it. She's fucking great.
So this is worse than Blade 2? Is that what you're saying?
Different. No,
You
I'd
just said
say
it was
it's-
like his weakest movie.
I'd say
I'm putting this in context.
it's better than Blade 2 by all accounts.
Okay.
But
Technically it is.
but Blade 2 has Donnie Yen in it, so
Okay, well.
yeah. No, it is very good. It's dark. Typical Del Toro. When the violence hits, it's brutal. But it is straight up noir. So if you like noir films,
That I do.
you should totally watch it. I mean, God, it's really hard to talk about because it's good, and Del Toro is just kind of like in a league of his own. And I think it's hard for me because I always want another Pan's Labyrinth, but I think that will always be such a special.
No, will never be another Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, but that's the bar that you kind of set to, and you're like,
Everybody has a masterpiece, right?
nothing's
It's
ever
just
going to be as good as that again. But still, it's expertly crafted. I'm afraid it's not going to do well because it's not a typical Del Toro movie. There's like no monsters in it, really. Well, there are. The monsters are the people, but
The monsters were us all along.
So it is currently streaming on HBO Max. It might be by the time this drops.
It usually stays on for a while, yeah.
So if you already have HBO Max, it's definitely worth checking out. Fantastic performances, beautifully shot. It's not shot by Guillermo Navarro, though. The guy, I think that's his name, the guy who shot like everything else he's done.
Right, he has that regular guy he goes to, yeah.
Yeah, you can see his footprint on everything. This did well, though. It still is really, really gorgeous.
Cool.
So,
Nice.
Check it out.
yeah.
Jason, what you got?
I watched that movie with Bob Odenkirk, Nobody.
Oh, yeah, that's also on HBO Max.
It is. That's how I watched it.
And I should clarify, we don't have a deal with HBO Max.
We do not.
No.
I do. It's called Jason Gives Me His Password.
Dude, they're going to come down on us.
That's the deal that I have.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know about the movie Nobody, but it's like Bob Odenkirk plays this average kind of guy. Well, here's the little blurb. I'll read this. A docile family man slowly reveals his true character after his house gets burgled by two petty thieves, which, coincidentally, leads him into a bloody war with Russian crime boss.
Oh, yeah.
I think this was directed. The director's name is Ilya Nashuler. I'm probably massacring that, but I think he was one of the stunt men for John Wick, right?
It got a lot of comparisons to John Wick.
It is John Wick.
So.
It is John Wick.
Okay.
It's John Wick with a pinch of Breaking Bad and history of violence in it.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to leave out Falling Down with Michael Douglas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything really to do with falling down, personally.
But that's kind of
like someone's mental breakdown. This is more like he's in a midlife crisis and he gets feeling better through violence.
Oh, okay.
Like you do.
As you do, yes.
I mean, God didn't really talk against violence.
I mean, he used to be like the John Wick type character. He used to be a cleaner or whatever they call him. I don't know. And he's retired, and his wife was 1-2, but she never does anything in the movie because it's all about just the guys. And then, yeah, the house gets burgled. He feels emasculated, so he has to go out and start kicking ass again. It's John Wick. But
Is that an endorsement or?
There's some good fights. Bob Odenkirk's always great. It's not strictly played straight. I mean, it's obvious that it's supposed to be like a little comedic and kind of far fetched in places. But like Christopher Lloyd plays his dad, and there's a scene near the end where Christopher Lloyd is with him and his two sons, Bob Odenkirk being one of them. And they're fighting off the Russian bad guys, and Christopher Lloyd is just slowly shuffling along with a shotgun and somehow avoiding all the bullets.
Because he's Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, it's just... I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I can't give it an endorsement.
Okay.
If you were a big Bob Odenkirk fan, I think you would dig it, because he's always great.
I thought
He
about
brings
watching it for the
fights are cool.
stunt.
Yeah, there's some good
Stunt
fights.
guys in there, but I didn't have a whole lot of expectations out of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just sort of rote. And
I think it got dropped at a good time. It pretty much hit during the height of the pandemic and played a lot of drive-ins, I think.
yeah.
Which was probably the only way people were going to watch it because it was just going to get lost in obscurity otherwise.
Anyway, so not a ringing endorsement by any means, but you could do worse.
Well, that's how it goes.
How about you? You got a good one to save us from this? Well, I guess Michael's was a good one.
Yeah, Michael liked his.
Yeah, I liked mine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as good as Play 2, but it was
So
pretty
there's
good.
there's one I want to shout out real quick. Just like I don't want to talk about it because I think I'm going to do something else about it later. But Devil Story, I finally got around to watching this. You watched it too, Jason.
Yes, you showed it to me.
Fucking insane, amazing film.
What is Devil Story? Tell us a little bit about it, at least.
All right, so it's a French flick from the 80s, very quote-unquote ambitious. They really thought they were going to give a run to American horror and make something truly terrifying. And it's just the most batshit, like... I think when we watched it, Jason, you described it as the most incompetently made movie you'd ever seen.
It's up there. Some of our listeners may be familiar with Manos, The Hands of Fate, which I always thought was the most incompetent film. But No.
Man,
It's Devil Story.
It's just so crazy. I would put it in the realm of stuff like Spookies, The Winter Beast, which I super hyped up because I loved it.
Spookies is better than this.
But yes, Spookies is still somehow more coherent than this film, and it's a crazy monster mash, but it's not really the monsters you would expect to have in a movie. You've got like a devil horse, you've got a psychic cat, you've got a crazy like subhuman mongoloid guy in a Nazi uniform, which the synopsis wrongly states is a zombie.
But he has a lot of blood that constantly comes out of places.
You've got a ghost ship that shows up.
Ghost ship?
That traveled to Egypt, so there's also a mummy, and that mummy raises a woman from the dead to be his bride.
Yes.
And it's just a whole bunch of chaos.
It is so funny. Don't watch it alone.
Don't watch it alone.
Watch it with a buddy. Have some beers.
Yes.
Oh,
it's guaranteed to be a good night. I don't want to say more about it because our blog thing's almost ready to go, and I think I'm crazy enough that I want to write things about this movie. So
It does help if you actually see images and stuff, like some screen grabs.
So yeah, I want to be part of the mystery.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah, part of it.
All right, Sarah McLachlan. He's over here building a mystery about.
Well, once you're
Devil
master of the
Story.
mystery, you'll be able to order us around.
You have no power over me. Michael, we got to get you to this
Yeah,
film.
you gotta
Man. It's
watch
crazy.
it. It's great. So what's your real movie then?
My real movie, what I want to talk about, I didn't.
The Devil Story is not a real movie.
I wasn't a huge fan of this, but I think it's worth talking about just because of the situation of it is. So I checked out Drive My Car, directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. Mm-hmm. This is up for Best Picture on the Oscars right now.
Yes.
I think it's the first time a Japanese film's been in the running and actually,
Which is insane.
has this much momentum. Mm-hmm. Probably a lot thanks to Parasite. They've kind of broken down the boundaries on foreign films squeaking in there. It's a drama. It's based on a short story by... Oh god, it just left my mind. I should know his name. He's like one of the most famous Japanese authors.
Oh my god. You're so filling. This is staying in, by the way. Don't edit this.
Oh
out.
god.
What's that word for Japanese fanboy?
Murakami.
Murakami. You're a bad Murakami.
No, that's the name of the guy.
Oh.
Really famous author. So it's basically this drama, right? And it's about this dude. He's a famous stage actor, and he like puts on these plays, right? And you guys are just still laughing. Wow. Trying to talk about this film.
I'm sorry. It's a serious Oscar film. We'll be quiet now. Please continue.
Yeah, so he's a famous stage actor, and he puts on these plays, and he does this weird like multilingual thing where like it's his claim to fame, right? Where every actor in the play uses a different language, and they have like a big screen up in the back that like shows you the whole script as it's going in every language.
Okay.
Very impractical. I don't
Yeah.
think that would ever be a thing.
I don't really understand the point. But okay.
And then
I'm already pissed off.
his wife, who was an actress and now writes scripts for television. She works at a studio doing like TV dramas and stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like I don't want to shit on the film,
But you do.
but I do want to shit on the film. I would love the idea that a Japanese film wins an Oscar because
Sure.
that would be so cool.
But it should still be a good movie.
But I also feel like this film, like, I know I'm going to piss people off when I say this. Probably not our listeners, because I doubt they care about a random Japanese drama. Because we, run more in the horror crowd. But it's like, it felt so, like, generic and low tier. And I'm not, like, a super watcher of dramas, right? But even, like, if you're thinking Japan, there's, like, Yasujiro Ozu. All kinds of crazy stuff, like Tokyo Story. Like, just amazing dramas that are, like, simple stories, but the characterization and the buildup of everything is so good.
Well, we are talking about the vanilla American, Oscar nominations. I mean, it's...
Right. And so basically it's this thing where he discovers his wife's cheating on him, and then she dies in a random accident, and they're never kind of able to, like, talk and resolve that, and it time skips, and the title comes in that he has a car that he loves. It's a Saab, like, 900 Turbo, I think. Random European car. Looks super cool. And he loves to drive it, and he takes this like residency where he goes to a place and he's supposed to put on this play, and he's sort of like fallen from fame because like after his wife died he couldn't act anymore. He has all this regret, and he gets assigned this like plucky young girl to be his driver, and it's this very contrived like, oh, we have to give you a driver, it's in our rules for the resident artist to have a driver because once an artist was driving around and killed a person by accident, so now we have that in the budget every year, and it's it does the thing I hate in dramas where like things will happen because they have to happen to make the next thing happen no matter what.
Right.
So it's like everyone has a tragic backstory that's like their defining thing that then you learn about as it goes.
That sounds like Oscar bullshit.
And then it's like, he can't act anymore, and there's this other guy who's like, it's a young actor that like knew his wife, and it's like, well, did he sleep with my wife or not? And there's this tension, and then he gets cast as the main person, but everyone kind of wants the main guy to be the lead in the play, but he doesn't want to act. And then, 11th hour, the dude gets arrested, and it's like, oh, you have to be the person, or we can't have the play.
Sure.
It was just, I hate to bash on it, but it was very ham-fisted and very like almost childish level of drama.
Ooh.
What I think you should tell everybody what you said the title of it should be.
No, I don't want to get into that. That would truly piss someone off. It draws some conclusions that I was like, I don't know if I really agree with where it goes, but it's like a 3-hour movie too, and for that runtime, and you'll notice I might say this about Brimstone later too.
No, that's fair.
They didn't use that time to really like build the characters in a way that was interesting. Like by the end, it was still pretty surface level with everyone.
Right.
And I saw a lot of people praising it because they said like there was a subtlety to it that was appealing. And I guess if that's your thing, I can see that maybe. But to me, it was like I wanted more the whole time. Like, tell me more about these people.
I think there's a built-in thing that people automatically try to defend Oscar bait as well, when it's just really not that good, And there's been a ton of those, and people are like, "Well, I think you just missed the point," and I'm like, "It just wasn't very good."
But I will say it's beautifully shot. All the actors are great in it. Everyone, amazing there. There was a part in the middle where it kind of really started to appeal to me, where they're actually doing like the production, and they go through like casting every person, read-throughs of the scripts, how they start to like stage it and do like the actions and moving together. And they do a lot of talking about the play itself. It's a production of, I think, Uncle Vanya by Chekhov. And he gets into this whole philosophy he has about it where it's like, if you give yourself over to the play, like the words will fill you up and kind of bring yourself out as you act it out. And I thought all that stuff was kind of interesting, but it's really just like an ancillary bit to move you along in the later drama. So
I'm glad you watched it because I don't want to watch it.
it wasn't for me. If it
me.
vaguely sounds anything at all like you'd be interested in, I would say go check it out and give it a shot. You may feel totally different to me. I think it's one of those ones that'll be super subjective.
Well, you know that the Academy doesn't understand Japanese movies' true quality because One Cut of the Dead wasn't nominated for Best Picture. So,
Amazing film.
what do they know?
I am happy that Parasite won though, because I know that was also a contentious
Parasite's
thing.
actually
Like,
good though.
it was a great film, and it felt very like that was like very definitively a South Korean film in every sense of the word. So drive my car, check it out, see what you think. I'm probably wrong.
Okay, so
Brimstone.
yeah, do you guys want to talk about Brimstone?
Not really.
Do we have to? I've got other movies I can talk
2016?
about.
I mean, if you want to, if you really want to. Wow, you guys had that violent of a reaction to this film, huh?
No, there's things I can talk about it. I mean,
Well, that's good because we're recording a podcast.
I've
Michael.
thought of a few things.
Okay.
Let's start with my first beef with the film.
Should we give a synopsis or like anything?
That is my first beef with the film.
Oh, okay, all right. Continue.
I'll read the synopsis for us.
Okay.
In the menacing inferno of the old North American West, Liz is a genuine survivor who is hunted by a vengeful preacher for a crime she didn't commit.
Well, I mean, I think on the surface, that's what it is. That's what it's about. That's the gist of the story.
That is barely the plot, and you only know that by like the end of the film.
Sure, but do you want to know the whole plot before you watch the movie?
But that's not even like your inroad on the film.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. And it is a lengthy film, as Dustin pointed out. It's like 2.5 hours. So we won't belabor some of the points that are perhaps...
Well, that's the interesting thing, though, is for that time, there's not a lot of plot.
Okay. All right, let's get into it. All right. It's 2016, right? That's when it came out. Directed by Martin Koolhoven, a Dutch director. Apparently, he's really popular over there. He had like a string of #1 movies in a row.
IMDb said that too, and I wondered if maybe he wrote his own entries or something.
He's the greatest Dutch filmmaker ever to live. But he got a lot of acclaim for Winter and Wartime, like a World War II drama that came out in 2008. So I think that gave him a lot of
clout and stuff.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen any of his other films, so I have nothing to compare it to in the scheme of things.
So, Brimstone, yes. It is an internationally financed English language production. It's backed by a bunch of different countries, you know.
Yeah, and I actually have a fun note about that, because I wondered when it started and the title comes up, it says Koolhoven's Brimstone.
Yes.
And I was like, is this just like a pretentious thing, or why is this happening? And there actually is a reason for this, because when they were doing this whole co-finance thing, the American side of it said like the plot and like how they were going to do it was too long, and they wanted a final cut to it, that they could do whatever they wanted and have a final cut for America. And his like stipulation on that was like, well, if that's the case, then I want to call it Koolhoven's Brimstone, and then when you make the American cut, keep my name off it completely.
Right.
But it seems like in the end, the people from America they went with, they just liked it as it was, and so
I was gonna say, which one did I watch? And
that was
the other one.
There's only the one.
There's
cut.
only the one cut in the end.
He got his.
You know what I would rather have watched though is Verhoeven's Brimstone. I think that would have been much cooler of a film.
What, this wasn't bloody enough for you?
There was no, no.
All right.
I think the first thing I want to say is that I thought of this last time with Silverado and forgot to say it, and I think this film even more. When we talk about Westerns, the breadth of genre it can cover within just being a Western is hugely vast.
This is a good example of that. It really is, because we're going from Silverado, which is kind of a light, fun, adventurous kind of throwback, to Brimstone, which is still very much a Western, but is also...
We'll talk about
It's a Western. But, I mean, it has some of those same tropes, but they're kind of...
And I feel like even when we finish this, like we will have done 3 films, and I don't think that even begins to scratch the surface of like the breadth of all the different types of Westerns that can exist.
Right. Yeah, you could tell almost any story through it. I like this description. If we're talking about what genre this is, Owen Gleiberman of Variety described it as a sadomasochistic Western domestic horror film.
Do we want to talk about genre off the top? I can do that.
Sure.
I've got some thoughts. Is this a Western?
I think it's a Western. Why do you think it's not a Western? It's set during the Old West. It's the American frontier. I don't think they ever specify like which state or territory or anything.
Isn't it like Oklahoma or no?
No, I think
South
it's
Dakota.
Where did the Dutch settle a lot? Probably one of those places.
I think it's more of the northwestern area because we get into the mountains, and so it could be. I don't know.
It's America.
It is America. So here's my thing. In our first episode 0, when we defined what genre films were, we basically said there's a lot of answers to that, like it could be anything really. But one thing we kind of all agreed on was that like genre films are always very defined by their genre. They try to be of the type of the thing that they are. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So then our next thing, if we talk about like say when we discussed Malignant, we said that it wasn't giallo, despite many claims to the contrary, because though it had some elements that also are elements of giallo, the totality of what Malignant is wasn't really a giallo.
Okay.
Yes, correct. So the end result of that was I kind of jokingly said, well, just because Malignant has pretty colors, that doesn't make it a giallo, because if we say that any film with pretty colors is a giallo, then that deals in weird other stuff that is definitely not.
Sure. Yeah. I agree.
So my question is, just because this is set in the Old West, does that automatically make it a Western?
Not automatically, but I think there's enough Western tropes that make it a Western.
I think this teeters on the edge. I think this could go either way. I try to think of if I took this story, plucked it out of the setting, and stuck it somewhere else, would the story still work? And this one borderlines no.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you need the anonymity of Western settlements.
Yeah, right.
If she was in a bigger city or like an established place, I think this would be much harder because
That's a good point.
the main character is really trying to disappear. A lot of we're going to talk about it. she's trying to leave an old life and disappear into somewhere else.
Maybe we should go ahead and get into the plot.
So that's where I kind of
let's put a pin in this. Maybe
I kind of was teetering on it because I was like, if you pluck this and put it somewhere else,
that's a good point.
it doesn't work.
Yeah, I like that.
we'll come back
needs
to it.
Be there.
But to me, I don't think it had enough of those like check boxes where I felt like it was.
This is going to be a very rambling episode. I can tell you that already. Okay, so basically, the story begins with Dakota Fanning. She plays the lead. She's the lead actress.
Liz.
Liz is her name.
Which right off the bat, honestly, I think she did great.
Dakota Fanning is great in this. She's really kind of an underrated actress.
And you know, it's funny because she wasn't the first pick either. They had was it Mia Wasikowska?
Yes.
I butchered that name. Sorry. She was lined up first, and then had another thing going on. I guess there was like timing issues that messed up, and they went with her.
And did you see who was supposed to play Kit Harington's role?
Yeah, Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson was supposed to play it.
My man dodged a bullet.
And apparently,
But Kit Harington didn't.
spoiler, but Kit Harington only had like a couple of days to prepare for this,
And
which is interesting.
he felt very after the fact. Anyway, that I don't know. There's
Yeah.
well, anyway.
Okay, so
Okay, first thing, I'm going to let you get into the plot, but I want to talk about the structure too. We should bring that up top level. This film is chaptered.
right, it begins with the chapter Revelation. Right?
And it's told out of order. Let's say that up front.
Yes, it's told out of order.
And I guess intentionally so.
Yeah. Now, I will say that the order works. I think the order that's told works for this movie.
To me, it only worked once the ending happened.
But that's the point, right?
Yeah,
you get
but
the
like,
whole story. Once
but
you see
it
the whole
pissed
thing.
me off through most of the movie.
Okay, well, we'll get into that.
Okay, so now that we've established that one fact, Jason, go ahead.
First act, yes. Liz is a midwife. It starts with her helping a woman give birth. We find out very quickly that Liz is mute.
Yep.
So her daughter, who's like, 5 or 6, understands sign language that Liz gives and can, translate for those who do not know ASL.
I don't think it was called ASL.
Probably not.
We actually know what it was called because they hand her a book, and it's like,
I know. I was making a joke. Don't be pedantic.
It's her daughter's name Sam too. We should say.
Her daughter's name is Sam.
And she's got a husband named Eli, and he has a son from a prior marriage named Matthew.
Yes, and Matthew keeps insisting that Liz is not his mother.
Yeah, we've got that typical family drama.
Sure.
he's a little shit, man.
Well,
I mean, he's supposed to be, but yeah, he's a little shit.
so she's well liked by the community. The family she just helped give birth. The man hugs her and everything. They're going back home. They're getting waved at by people and all that good stuff. Then we kind of meet the family. They live on a farm. We see Eli, her husband, instructing the son, whose name I forgot just now. Matthew. How to use a rifle, and Liz doesn't like it. Puts it into it.
Yep. They kind of his conclusion is kind of like, well, he's going to do it eventually, so I should teach him.
Yeah.
But she just has like a apprehension about it.
Right. So pretty much the next time we see them, they're at church.
Like you do for the time.
Sure. You have to go to church. If you don't, no.
I did notice, though, right off the bat, I knew something was different because the church was very puritanical. Like everyone is in black.
Yeah, they're all black, yeah.
So
This is definitely vestiges of the old world.
Yeah.
Still present. And I actually like this scene a lot because Liz is like fussing with Sam or something, so her back's turned from the pew in the aisle.
Her
and all
face
that.
is dirty or something, I think.
Yeah. And you hear the preacher come in, and he starts talking, and you just see Liz's face just drop, and she slowly turns, and we see Guy Pearce as the preacher. He's got like a scar over his eye. He's got like a big scar on his neck. Is he a little burned here? He looks maybe a little burned. I couldn't really tell. You could definitely tell he's been through the ringer.
Yeah.
He just looks rough.
Yeah. And he's got a Dutch accent.
And I've got a note on this. This is in one of the many trivia notes I found where it was like talking up Koolhoven, so I wondered if he or someone connected to him wrote it. An inspiration on this was Once Upon a Time in the West. And the same way that like harmonica's first introduced in that film, he comes into the scene and he's not in frame, but you like hear him and hear like sounds related to him and his talking, but then like later he's shown in camera.
Right, yeah.
And so this was kind of trying to be a homage to that.
Nice little lift, sure. And
That much better film.
You could tell that Guy Pearce, the Reverend, he's never given a name.
He's
known
just
as
the Reverend.
He's a fire and brimstone type. He says that, we're all sinners, and he says that he knows the flames of hell.
And he straight up calls out his congregation, like, some of you have sinned.
And it's very much the fire and brimstone kind of.
Yeah, he's doing which we come to find out later is he's very specifically calling out someone there. But you don't really, like, you see him as menacing, as like a menacing looking person, but honestly, like, he's just a preacher to me and they're all menacing. So I don't really worry. It was like, well, he's just one of those. So,
But notably what we see is that Liz is spooked. Like, there's something about this that just sets her off.
Yep, scared to death. And everyone's leaving the church, and of course the preacher's shaking all their hands, and there's a pregnant woman who stops, and he even touches her belly. And Liz is seeing all this, and I guess she leaves from the back.
Yeah, she kind of slips out.
Yeah.
And even Eli notices it, and he's kind of like, oh, you didn't shake hands with the Reverend.
Right, yeah.
Is everything okay?
But then that woman starts going into labor. So Liz jumps into action, goes to help. They're in the church, and Liz says to her daughter, through sign language, that the baby's head is too big. And they have to choose the baby or the mother. And she tells this, I guess it's the woman's mother that she tells this to.
It seems like it was just another woman that just, like, hung
some
around
older
the
lady
home.
is there too, and she's like,
Because the husband's there at first, and they tell him to go wait outside.
right, because men should not be around for that.
they don't really. The interesting thing is they don't really give the option to the mother. Like, Liz knows what the right thing to do is.
Right, I think she knows that if she tells everyone that they're all going to say no, save both, and they're both going to die.
Right.
So she has to take some sort of action.
And she does deliver the baby, but we see the forceps involved, and
There's a lot of blood.
yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. So after that, she is very much shunned by the community because they call her a murderer. The father shows up drunk at their house later that night, shooting his rifle through the window and stuff like that. Well, he was shooting bullets. He wasn't shooting his rifle. That's not really how it works.
And notably, the kid, Matthew, he immediately, like, fires back.
Yeah, he's shooting back.
Matthew's perched, like, with snipe position, like, at his window and everything.
But Eli just takes up with him. He's like, have you been hurt?
Yeah. But the Reverend ends up showing up and calming, I think his name is Samuel.
No.
Samuel is...
His name is Nathan.
Nathan, right?
Nathan.
It's just one of those biblical names. The Reverend ends up showing up and basically calming Nathan down and hugging him and everything. But he has an ulterior motive for doing this.
Sure.
And ends up coming into the house to try it really as a front to Eli and everything, basically to say, like, it's okay, I'm here to help and all this stuff. But Liz is like, don't let the Reverend in the house. And he's like, why?
Yeah, we have to. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. He just saved our skin.
This is one of the first moments where we get this annoying, to me it was annoying, that continues to happen in this film, where it's like she never fully explains anything to people. And continually it's like to her detriment.
But what is she supposed to say here?
I mean, she's clearly competent in sign language.
Yeah, but what is she supposed to tell her husband?
But I do think you bring up an interesting point.
And I have a bigger point to that, but we need to get further in the film first.
Okay.
I do think you bring up an interesting point that one of the reasons she doesn't divulge everything that happens, I directly equated this to the scandals in the Catholic Church. That when you have a preacher who everyone believes is a man of God, and you have a shady past that no one really knows about,
And you're a woman.
and you're especially, and you try to make an accusation like she's going to have to make, no one is going to believe you. Like, no, not a single person.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it.
But again, she doesn't even try. But then we find out the arrangement with her husband and everything kind of has a different thing going on. Anyway,
So the husband goes to fetch Liz because she's not at the kitchen table with them while they're talking. But she's hiding
she's
right outside the
snooping,
door. Yeah. Her husband walks past, and then the Reverend starts speaking to her. Like, I know you're there. I know you can't talk, but you can hear.
Tells her she's responsible for the death of that baby.
Yep.
She's going to pay for it.
And he has an interesting line here, too, which I think makes more sense later. But it's a quote from the Bible. One thing he says here is, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts?" or in your heart, because he's talking just to Liz here. And that's what Jesus says when he's risen from the grave, and the disciples are startled and frightened.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know that. I had to look that up.
Being kind of cheeky, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's already issuing threats. Like, that. I don't think the film was ever, like, trying to hide the fact that there's something going on between the two of them.
Right. There's obvious they have a past.
Sure.
I wasn't sure the angle yet. Like, at this point, I was wondering, like, is it kind of like a witchcraft type thing?
It could be anything at this point, right?
Yeah, but it's also still, she's a woman in this time, and yeah.
So he leaves, and the next day they find all their sheep slaughtered.
Which is kind of a sad thing, because Matthew, like, really enjoyed, like, I guess, you know, feeding, caring for the sheep and stuff.
Yeah.
You can tell he had, like, a bond with them, and then he's the one that discovers them.
Yeah, they're all torn apart.
And notably, some of the ones that were pregnant, they kind of have, like, the baby pulled out, like, from the cut stomach.
Right. So, of course, Eli thinks that Nathan came back and did this. He and his son ride off to Nathan's place and find that Nathan is not there. His family's gone. There's no belongings whatsoever.
Yep. Completely abandoned.
However, the Reverend is on their farm. And I forget the exact events here. It's, oh yeah.
Well, see, first a little bit of the day goes by, because I know they go around the city. It's what Liz goes to see the family from the opening, because she's supposed to check back in about their baby.
And they don't want her to, and
Yeah,
they don't
they're
want her to come
shunning
in.
her.
And they do the scene again where she's kind of going by. I think that there's people building a house, and they do the same thing where, like, the little girl Sam tries to wave at them and say hi, and they just totally ignore them.
Yeah.
Then they get to that house, and they turn them away, and they say, "We don't want your help anymore. The Reverend got us in contact with a doctor, and he's going to come and take care of the baby now.
That's right.
So we don't need you."
Yes. So they're being shunned.
So she kind of goes back home in defeat, and then that night's when stuff starts to pop off, because she decides that she's going to slip out in the night.
Yeah, she goes to the Reverend to the church to try to kill him. She has a dagger. But finds her daughter's doll and no Reverend.
Correct.
And starts...
Which starts the first of many times that the Reverend teleports around like Jason Voorhees.
Sure. But, I mean, I think there's a reason for that.
This is a Hold the Dark situation, but we'll get into that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so...
Yeah, so there's some
Eli's
shots
in
where...
the barn, and the Reverend's in there, and he...
Well, before that, he's, like, stalking around the house. We see, like, a clip of him, like, he's in the daughter's room.
That's right, yes.
And then Eli wakes up, goes to check on the daughter. He's not there.
That's
but,
right.
Yeah,
He
the
sees a
daughter's
light.
fine.
He sees a light in the barn, goes to investigate. There was like just a lit lantern hanging there. And then the Reverend comes up behind him and stabs him in the gut.
This scene, I thought, it set up a tone for the movie that I kind of wish carried. Because what ends up happening with this is really fucking brutal. Because he knows he's gone. Like, there's no surviving. He's suffering. He's in pain. And once the Reverend is basically taken the little girl, their daughter, and gone off, I guess, right? He takes her now.
Well, he's going to take her.
He's going to take her. But it's left to the kid.
Well, she comes back to their homestead because she realizes the Reverend went there. And when she gets there, they find Eli
on the ground, and he's got his intestines pulled out of his stomach.
Yeah, and it's like wrapped around his throat.
And he's begging to die. Like, he's begging her.
Yeah.
And she can't do it. And then that's when Matthew comes in, and he kind of takes the gun from her. Very reluctantly.
Ends up killing his own dad.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, he was dead anyway. It was
yeah.
a mercy kill.
But, like, just the trauma that now is inflicted on this kid.
And that morning they had talked about, Liz had asked Eli about getting out of town for a while. She's kind of wanting to dodge the Reverend. And he had made plans, I think it's to go see his father, who's a little further up north.
In the mountains, he says.
And so she has Matthew go and get their wagon. They get Sam and they just set out.
Their house is on fire, too. The house is burned down.
So this kind of puts an end to
this chapter.
And then the next chapter opens with...
Called Exodus.
Yes, opens with a young girl.
Almost like Silverado, she's laying in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's obviously dying in the desert.
She ends up getting picked up. Like, she's dying in the desert, but she ends up getting picked up by some Chinese immigrants that are coming through, which I do really appreciate this about this film, is that I think way too many Westerns brush over the influence and impact of Chinese immigrants in the West, or they'll either like chalk them
They go
up.
way too far.
Yeah, they'll go way too far, chalk them up as a caricature, and almost make them comedic relief. But the West was made by immigrant labor.
Sure.
Like, the entire United States was made by immigrant labor.
Exactly.
But like, I think this actually showed a truer depiction of Chinese immigrants. And so they're speaking Cantonese with each other, and
We learned the girl's name Joanna later, but
right. And so they end up like basically just taking her to this town that they're heading
they
to.
take her to Bismuth, which is a mining town.
And promptly sell her to a whorehouse.
Ran by a man named Frank, played by Paul Anderson,
This is one of the best performances, I think, in this whole movie.
He does a good job. He's very sleazy.
and his place is called Frank's Inferno.
Frank's Inferno.
I honestly, like, he had so much charisma
Yeah.
that I hadn't really seen this dude in a whole lot. But like, that character is one of the most well fleshed out characters of the movie to me, and it's weird that's that's the most well fleshed out character to me. He's a ruthless motherfucker, but he's really
He's very
fun,
well acted. Good
really
character.
fun to watch in all the scenes. But yeah, Joanna is sold to him, and he's knows that he can't really put her to work right
Yet.
now. Like, I think he realizes, like, well, people are probably going to think pretty poorly of me if I do this. So she ends up kind of being taken under the wing of one of the prostitutes there. Seems to be like kind of,
She seems a little older, like she's
Sally's
been there
her
a long
name.
time.
Yeah.
and Sally is basically talking to her, trying to ask her, take care of her, sort of a thing. Well, she quickly ends up getting thrown into this life.
Well, there's some interesting things where it's like she asks her basically if she's had her period yet or not.
Yeah.
'Cause that's kind of like the determining factor that Frank cares about for when he's going to put her to work.
Yep.
Because of course, then you're a woman, as they said then. And so she actually has Joanna kind of hide this fact because she has already
Right.
had her period, and so she's trying to like push off when she's
Postpone
finally
the horribleness for a while. And then we actually get like a little hint too of what's going on with her story, because a bunch of the prostitutes come in and they're all getting ready and stuff, and they meet Joanna for the first time, and they're all like giving her a hard time. One of them says something about how, did your daddy like you so much that he wanted to share you with everyone? And she gets a look on her face and obviously is upset and mad and gets up and leaves.
Right.
And we get a little bit about like the situation in Bismuth is they've kind of given Frank free reign on this place because it's a mining town.
Those are hardworking miners, and they
Hardworking
deserve
life,
to
yep.
treat women how they want.
His brother's the sheriff, notably. So
Yeah.
there's kind of a bit of a corruption. They
a
don't
nice
explore it,
arrangement.
but it's clear that this is just sort of like a setup they got going on.
And further illustrates just the powerlessness of women.
But one of the rules that Frank kind of prides himself on for his establishment is that when he has a customer, they are treated with utmost respect, and that his women will never harm them at all, ever.
The customer is literally always right, according to Frank.
Which hit me kind of weird because I feel like if you're running a brothel, it's like the women working for you are like everything to
You want to protect
to
your
existence.
merchandise in air quotes.
Yeah, you would
right?
care about that more than like an unruly customer. You're going to be like, well, fuck you, I'm going to throw you out. But this is like totally backwards.
I also think that he just sees women as a never-ending resource to be plundered.
Right.
That could
Because
be
there's
what it
always
is.
another Joanna to come through the door,
Also, Bismuth is South Dakota, by the way. So this is where we
Okay,
are.
there we
is
go.
South Dakota.
Wonderful.
We got there finally. Good job.
Woo! I'm useful for something.
Michael did it.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, so then we get that
So then we get the unruly customer.
unruly
'Cause
customer.
they tell you that rule just because it's the setup for this to happen.
Yeah, because he wants to be with Joanna. But Sally intervenes and says, I'll give you a freebie. But the guy says Joanna has to watch.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Joanna's in the room with them while they're doing their thing.
Oh, I did think it was comical, like the first time she walks in on someone having sex, and they're doing like just very lame, like, "Oh, come on, you can do it." And she asks her like, "Why do you do that?" And she's
Make
like,
noises and
Yeah,
stuff.
she's like, "Oh, it makes them feel good, helps them finish quicker."
Yeah, but that was the thing for me is it gets it over quicker.
Yep.
That was really funny.
This dude, like, is obviously a real sick. He's also a right mean bastard. Like,
yeah.
you can tell he's a horrible human being, and things start to turn, and like the entire time that he's having sex with Sally, he's making eye contact with Joanna, and it's so disgusting to watch. Like, this scene is gross, but then like, as things progress, he tells Sally, "I want you to hit me." And she knows what's going to happen the second she does it. And she's like, "I'm not going to do that, man." Like, well, he ends up threatening Joanna, basically, and Sally hits him. Well, then he just starts beating the shit out of Sally.
Yeah.
And you can tell it immediately affects Joanna.
She goes for the pistol that's hanging on the bed.
Yeah, she gets the pistol out and points it at him. Well, this is actually getting him going even more now.
He leans into it.
He starts choking Sally, like really choking Sally.
Like, oh, he's going to kill her. There was no question that he was...
It ain't Kane Hodder playing around in a convention. No. Choking. This is real. I'm going to kill you choking.
And he
keeps saying,
basically...
shoot me. He said, shoot me.
Well, I think he knew the gun wasn't loaded.
Well, right. That's what got him off.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he pulls the trigger, he literally gets off.
Yeah. But then he walks over to Joanna and basically is going to make Joanna go down on him. And that's when Sally comes up with her own pistol.
Yeah, here, bam!
With her little 2-shot Derringer. And, but then we see kind of the corruption of this town and the treatment of women in this town. I do think that is a common thread through this film.
No, absolutely.
That I think gets a little muddied. Like,
We'll see. Okay.
I think that should, because if you're not careful, you focus on the Reverend and not the treatment of women. Because of the way the film is paced and the way it's put together, the Reverend is the true story. But really, I think the true story is like what happens to Liz in her life. But I think it can if you're not careful.
Well, we'll talk about that.
But yeah, the sheriff is now out in the middle. They've basically taken Sally in, and he tells them that, that there are laws in this town and that, you can't just kill, basically said like a prostitute cannot kill her own client.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. No matter what happens.
No matter what happens.
They hang her.
Yeah. At least they were kind though, and they hanged her right. Because you hear her neck break.
Yeah,
and I
the
was
one
like,
and done.
at least they didn't just let her hang there.
And notably, one of the other prostitutes kind of covers Joanna's eyes.
Yeah, because they're all out watching.
And then we get a little time skip within this chapter.
Time skip. Yep. Joanna grows up some, and she is now being played by Dakota Fanning.
See, this threw me.
So then
this
that makes
scene.
the connection that Joanna is apparently the Liz from the first chapter.
Right.
This threw me because I was like, "Who is this girl? Is this the girl? Is this the little girl from the beginning? That like is something happened?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
But I think it's supposed to. Yeah.
You don't
Right,
you don't
exactly.
you don't yet have the hint that there's like a non-linearity thing going on.
Right. This scene is really funny though. The introduction to her playing Joanna is she's with a client now. Like she's grown up and she's with a client. And it's some schmuck dude. And one of the other girls runs in and she's like, "Frank's getting ready to get in a shootout out in the street. You got to come down." And she's like, and the dude's like, "Well, I'm not done yet." And so the other girl lifts her,
She flashes her ass at him.
flashes her ass, and Joanna's like, "Maybe we should have her join us the next time." And the dude immediately just like, "Oh!" And she just takes off running.
Which her friend that comes in is Elizabeth Grundy. We should set that up. They're kind of like best friends now.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That's her name.
So
They go out to the gunfight, and
it's a funny scene.
It's a funny scene. The dude who challenged Frank is an older guy. He's talking about how he's corrupted his daughter and all this stuff, and he's a murderer. of
He's clearly like
daughters.
a city folk, you might say.
There's no question as to how this gunfight's going to go down.
Yeah.
But But yeah, there's a little bit of a monologue out there from this older dude basically telling Frank how much of a piece of shit he is, like we didn't already know. And then it comes down to they draw, and Frank quickly, like I don't even think the dude got his gun out, did he?
I don't think Frank killed him.
Well, that's the thing is when I watched this,
he shoots after the guy's already reacted.
at first I was like, what the fuck? They didn't even time the shots right. But then you see he had a gunman up on the next level.
There's a dude up there with the rifle.
Gotcha, okay.
He shot him.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
you see the man react to being shot, and then Frank's drawing his gun and shooting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, that was fun.
But yeah, then things go back in or whatever, and
We kind of get the life. Elizabeth and Joanna, are best friends. They're hanging out. Joanna's kind of giving herself over to this lifestyle, and that's just her world now.
Mm-hmm.
But Elizabeth wants to leave.
Yep.
And she thinks like, we can get out of here. We can kind of do our own thing. We don't need to be here.
And they're saving up money for it.
But as things progress, you kind of get there's a little bit too much time spent there between the two of them, I think.
I don't think there was that much, personally.
I don't know.
This is a long chapter. In the
It is
scheme
a really
of the
long
chapters.
chapter.
So anyway, Elizabeth is with a client who she bites his tongue.
Right. So he keeps trying to kiss her.
And she has a rule that
She
no one
says no
kisses her.
kissing.
And
Yeah.
and she tells him like he just keeps pushing, and she bites his tongue.
Yeah.
And this dude apparently is a bigwig at the mine. And so Frank is super pissed off.
And see, this is where I had a problem with his rules because I was like, wouldn't you want to protect your prostitute there? Because like,
Unless you just see them as a resource to be discarded.
I think
and
that's
plundered
another,
and-
but I think that's another trope of Westerns that we often see is there's usually a very protective quality over prostitutes in towns. Clearly there's not, because you wouldn't be whoring someone out. If someone chooses to do it on their own, that's their own thing, but like they're clearly forced into it. But yeah, I think we get used to that. And I don't think that was at all real life. I think this is probably a much closer picture to, depending on the town. I think it probably depended on the town.
I don't think it's beyond belief that there could be some godforsaken place where something like this could happen and no one would give a shit.
Right. And especially like for Frank, it's all about the money. And he's wanting to get as much gold from these guys as he can because he sees them as a continuous revenue stream. And so for him, each girl is,
I just don't know. It's like simple math, no girls, no money.
Yeah, but I mean, I really think it's just there's always another girl.
I don't think I don't think he thinks that far ahead.
I don't know. It just seemed a little incredulous to me, and it seemed like it was almost a thing where this is just a device to set up what happens in the story.
Possibly, but I mean, I don't have trouble buying him seeing them as just chattel.
Well, so Frank ends up basically
He cuts
telling...
Elizabeth's
Well,
tongue.
he asked the client what he wants.
Yeah, what
make
do
it-
you want
yeah.
me to do to her? Like, I'm not going to kill her because she didn't kill you, but what do you want done? And this dude, his name's Mike, ends up just like, I want you to cut her fucking tongue out. And I was like, holy shit!
Yeah.
Like,
And he does it immediately. He's like, all right, eye for an eye.
but he's making a show of this. Like, he's putting on a performance for all these guys.
Even though the guy's tongue wasn't removed, but yeah.
Yeah, they're. It's a pretty rough scene because you don't show it, but the next scene you see Elizabeth being tended to by the doctor, who's basically like,
He's really a character I wish had more screen time, a little bit. Because he's clearly like supportive of them.
I think he's probably. I almost felt for him because he's been to medical school. He's come out here thinking that he's going to make a difference. And he realizes that the world is shit.
Yeah.
Like, that there is no difference to be made here.
Yeah.
But he does give Elizabeth a book of sign language.
Which is, at the time, sign language for the deaf and dumb, I think is what it was called.
And we see Elizabeth and Joanna
They learn it so they can
learning
communicate
it
with one
and
another.
talking, yeah.
And then the next thing is they kind of go back to this idea of Elizabeth wanting to get out of there, and she's been seeing a marriage broker trying to set her up with someone. And of course, the fact that she is mute now is its whole own problem.
Yep.
But
The prospective husband knows this.
the broker finds just the right person who doesn't care about that. He just wants a good wife that can cook. And we learn his name is Eli.
And he has a young son.
So then there's your more connective
And
tissue
they have a picture. They show the picture, and it's Eli.
from the first chapter.
It makes me wonder what happened in Eli's life. You know, like that he
That wasn't uncommon. That really wasn't.
I know, but like that you had to see a marriage broker.
Pickings were kind of slim depending on where you were, you know?
Right, because they're in a whole other place from Bismuth.
Yeah.
And then she's getting the thing to go there to meet him.
Granted, the three of us have no business being with the women that we are with because we all are hitting way above our our class.
That's true. Yeah.
So clearly, I guess my marriage broker was online dating. So I guess that's kind of the thing. But I don't know.
But when they get the thing about the marriage broker, that's all set up. And it's going to pop off soon.
They're going to leave soon. They've got a bunch of money saved up.
I think she's wanting Joanna just to come along with her, right, to the other town.
Yeah.
But when
Joanna's going to be her sister.
Yep. And when they get back to the brothel, something's crazy has happened. There's expensive, rich guys walked in and bought out the whole place.
Bought the whole place, and he wants to see all the girls.
Yep. So Frank runs them all, gets them to dress up the best they can, and he basically coaches them and is like, all right, this is a big client. It's the first time he's come in here. This has to go perfect so that he will continue to come to us.
Mm-hmm. Do whatever he wants.
And he basically flat out tells them, if anyone screws this up at all, you're dead. Just flat out.
Yeah.
Now, I can't remember. Does Joanna get a look at who it is?
Yeah.
She does see him.
She sees that it's the Reverend.
So she puts on a blindfold.
Yep.
To basically try to obscure her
face,
face a little bit.
And that'll be the Reverend here. He doesn't have a scar.
Right. He's younger.
He looks much more put together.
Yeah. It doesn't look as fucked up. But as they all kind of present themselves, he's looking really nervous about the whole situation. Like he doesn't want to be there.
Right.
But then Joanna is the final girl to come down. And Frank's really playing this up, like telling this story about, I don't even know where she came from.
Yeah, she's wearing a mask over her eyes.
And he's like, oh, it's so mysterious.
Yeah. And he's like really trying to sell the whole thing, but and the Reverend's like, no, she's the one I want. He's like, but you paid for all of this. He said, no, I paid for no one to see me doing this, which I thought was a really interesting line.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you're still unsure of their story.
Yeah, what is their relationship?
You still don't know what's going on. But as he takes her up to the room to presumably do whatever, that's when you start to see her fight back against him, and he takes his belt off.
Yep.
And saying that God will punish you and I must punish you now because God has willed it. And you start seeing his fervent, like ultra religious.
Old school fire and brimstone. Hey, that's the name of the movie. Yeah. But then Elizabeth comes in.
Yeah, she's crying for help.
Yep. Joanna's crying for help. Elizabeth comes in with a knife and stabs him in the back.
Right. But that doesn't end well for Elizabeth, though.
No, because she in turn gets stabbed in the chest.
Yeah.
And is promptly killed.
And so she's laying there dead, and now Joanna has to figure out how she's going to get out of the situation. She thought she was going to be saved.
Mm-hmm. She picks up the knife herself.
She picks it up, slashes his eye,
yep.
and then just fucking slashes his throat.
Yeah.
Like, she goes for it.
And he's bleeding profusely, laying on the floor, staring up at her. And I mean, it looks to me like he's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dead.
And how she covers it is she basically she gathers up her stuff, and she takes one of the oil lanterns and throws it on Elizabeth and burns the entire inferno down.
Yep, she kind of stages it almost like Elizabeth and the Reverend.
Like they got in a tussle or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, she puts the knife in Elizabeth's hand.
And notably, she takes the little marriage broker packet
Right.
that Elizabeth had.
Yep.
Because the next scene is she goes to see the doctor and wants him to cut her tongue out.
Yeah, she takes a pouch of gold from the preacher, too. And
Yeah.
this is what she's going to pay the doctor with.
And the doctor is like, why do you want to do this? You sure you want to do this? And the doctor can't bring himself to do it.
Yeah. And she grabs a fucking scalpel and does it herself.
Yeah. Again, they don't show it.
No.
It's off screen, but it's brutal enough that you don't need to show that.
And I just want to make this note now for later. In removing her tongue, she loses her voice. Just put a pin in that thought.
Okay.
So I don't think that she lost her voice, but I have known people who have had tongue malformations and they choose not to speak. Just because of...
In the scope of the movie, she never speaks past this.
Right.
So just keep that thought in your mind. I'm going to come back to it.
Okay. All right.
So she ends up going to the marriage broker and passes herself off as Liz because it was a drawing. Mm-hmm. So it's like, here is this stick figure with boobs.
And I mean, she's kind of more attractive than the original Elizabeth in a lot of ways. So
It's a trade up.
yeah.
That's when that chapter ends.
Right. And so, now we get that.
So
now
next
we get-
chapter is called Genesis.
Yeah, chapter 3, Genesis. And we realize now we've been Inception kicking backwards
Yes.
in time.
Because this one opens up in the desert. There's a couple of men badly wounded.
We finally get Kit Harington.
We finally get Kit Harington. He plays Samuel. And his buddy's name's Wolf, I guess.
Are they
apparently.
buddies, though?
Not really.
Yeah.
Frenemies, maybe. They've obviously been involved in some sort of a heist or something. You know, they've robbed the bank.
There's been a big
whatever.
shootout.
Been a shootout, a lot of dead people.
Kit Harington's injured. His name's Samuel, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
Samuel.
This is the Samuel, yeah.
And he kind of limps to the only horse that's not been shot
Yeah.
in the conflict.
And the other guy that's still alive pulls a gun on him, and they ride off together.
So they end up showing up at this homestead.
It's kind of like a
essentially.
little commune, almost, I
Right.
would say.
It's which we come to learn is it's like a
Dutch community.
It's
Dutch
a Dutch
settlement,
community,
yeah.
Dutch settlement. That's a religious community
But here we meet Joanna.
And her mother, Anna.
played by
We see Joanna again, I guess. But obviously, yeah, right. Joanna, yeah.
And it's played by
younger and-
Carice Van Houten.
who is Melisandre from
Yes.
Game of Thrones.
Yes.
So more Game of Thrones in this film.
And I was
Yeah.
pissed that she and Kit Harington didn't have at least one scene together.
I know.
Or whatever. Yeah, so Joanna is the daughter of Anna and the Reverend.
Who still we never get his name.
Never get his name.
But honestly, I don't think it's.
No, doesn't matter. It's just it's interesting that they
Yeah.
never give it.
I think it keeps it more mysterious.
Samuel and Wolf, they go to the farm, and Joanna takes them into the barn without her parents' knowledge.
Right.
And during all this time, we're learning that the Reverend is just like we've already seen him. He's fire and brimstone, old school. Women obey, they do what they're told. He's asking his wife for sex in the beginning. She says no, and he's talking about how it's been too long and that she should bend to his will and do what he wants. And he's already giving looks at Joanna.
Yeah,
Right.
There's a time where she's taking a bath and he's kind of creeping
Yeah,
at the
it's
door.
obvious where this is going, and it starts to make more sense, her backstory.
And as he's starting to look to Joanna, that's when Joanna's mother now is like doing everything she can to subvert.
Yeah.
Like to step in between. And I think this is where we really should put that disclaimer for child abuse, child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
The way this is presented is very authentic. And the way that, what's her mother's name?
Anna.
Anna. The way that Anna goes about this is really hard to watch because I've heard stories from people that have been abused, and this is so common. Like,
Yeah.
basically taking the abuse on herself to protect her daughter.
Right.
But the whole time, Joanna's still kind of like slipping out to the barn to help Samuel.
Yeah, she patches him up and everything.
And she gets to know him a little bit. Like
Yeah.
they start to have this relationship. And I think Samuel really starts to catch on really quick.
Yeah, things are not right at this house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it eventually escalates very heavily.
And also conveniently, the preacher, he doesn't do any work.
Right.
That's for the women. He's a man of God, and he doesn't have to work.
Because that's what even sets up Joanna being able to treat them is that she
Yeah.
says, "Oh, well, she's old enough now; she can do work."
Right. And he doesn't go out in the barn or do any of that stuff.
When they have pigs, and there's it's a rough scene. It was a rough scene for me to watch.
They make her slaughter the
Yeah.
They make her slaughter the pig, which I get is something you'd have to do.
as she shoots it in the head.
Which she has one of those like bolt
Yeah,
thrower
Yeah,
things.
it's like a single shot whole thing. Yeah. And then she slices his neck
Yeah.
and cries.
And I'm not sure. I kind of wanted to know how they did that because that looked so.
looks good.
It looks,
It looks really
really
good.
real, and
Yeah.
which made it harder to watch. But yeah, she's very upset, very traumatized. Again, that's just kind of part of life. There, like if you're gonna eat, you got to eat.
Sure.
It doesn't just magically get there. No.
I will say this chapter is probably my favorite part of the film. If we do it by chapter, I almost feel like this part could have been a film to itself. if you just stretched it out and spent more time of like her relationship with Samuel and maybe his stories of his adventures.
You're not wrong.
And delved a little more on like the Reverend and Anna and their relationship, maybe their past.
Yeah. Although I do have one gripe I have with this scene, this sequence was, okay, so the preacher, he doesn't do any work, right? How did he get so ripped? You see him flagellating himself, and Guy Pearce is all jacked and ripped, and he's like, you don't do any work? How are you doing that? He's spending too much time at the gym. He should be working on their farm.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I saw him, but also the type of character that he is, you could see him focusing on like his temple. You could
The body is the temple.
like you could seriously see him as like the kind of guy who would do as much calisthenics as possible because he must keep his body in pristine shape. But
Yeah,
clearly,
and this is probably also a good time to point out how good Guy Pearce is in this role.
he really is.
He's so, you can tell he's having fun playing a very despicable character.
He doesn't get to play bad guys that often, and the bad guys that he has played, like the Mandarin, are not very good.
No.
Well, the one thing I will say is for all my gripes at this film, all the acting is superb. Like, across the board.
Great.
I think it's shot well too. It's very beautiful.
Great. I thought it was shot on film. It was not. It was shot digitally, but it looks really fucking good.
When I was looking at like other reviews and criticisms online, I saw like one of the most common criticisms I saw is people didn't like Kit Harington, and they said that his accent was kind of bad, but I thought he did great.
I thought he did fine. His accent was a little.
And I watched it.
I've heard people who have accents like that. So in real life,
We also don't know what area he came from, so
because he is like a drifter type.
Yeah.
I watched this with Tiffany, and she will always like harp on an accent if it's weird or she thinks it's off, and she didn't have a problem with it. So
yeah, there you go.
that said a lot to me.
I think it's meta, I think, to have a problem with his accent because you know how British
Right,
Kit
yeah.
Harington is, and so when you hear him,
the British person trying to sound like a cowboy,
and you've always heard him being Jon Snow and like having his very specific accent.
But I thought he did great. I would watch a Western that he helmed.
yeah, he did great.
Right.
I've always liked him.
So as it progresses to where
The big moment is that Anna finally confronts the Reverend
right,
Yes,
about the burgeoning feelings.
she knows
his
what he's
daughter.
up to, and she's telling him no, and he whips her, beats her.
He
Takes
kinda-
her to town somewhere and has a scold's bridle made for her.
yeah, which is like a piece that goes over her head and covers her mouth, and it locks in
there's
place.
a mouthpiece that goes inside. It goes on top of the tongue. And a lot of times they would have like little like needles and stuff, where if you tried to talk, it would just. And that's a holdover from medieval times,
Right.
You
And I
I
know-
could totally see these people using that too.
Yeah.
And I know he's the Reverend, and everyone respects him, but it just baffles my mind that like nobody is
I
put
think
off
it's-
by this at all.
I kind of see it though, because it's that bridging between the old world and the new.
It does not baffle me one bit because if you've spent as much fucking time in churches as I have, dude, like,
And it's not even the 1880s.
if you brainwash them enough and you tell them that this is God's will, this is what God wants you to do, and if you don't, you'll go to hell. People are so fucking afraid to go to hell that they will look past
Yeah.
all of the most horrible and heinous shit. Like, to me, I didn't see anything wrong with this because I've fucking seen it. Like, I get very angry about it because
Well, my thing is, I
You've
said,
seen
I
people
said,
wearing skulls bridles?
no, I've seen this mentality of like, well, I'm going to look past that because
Yeah,
clearly
right.
God has said that you've done something wrong.
Sure.
It's like, fuck you.
I don't know. I guess I always struggle with it because it's like I did sit through all that stuff, but then I was the person that was like, "But wait, that sounds wrong."
Right. But it also depends. Like, I think if you end up, like, I don't want to single out denominations because not all of them are the same. But
Well, our experience is mostly with Christian denominations.
yeah,
so.
but in even the sects within Christian denominations, like, they really differ a lot into how the treatment is of different people. And I think when you start
So
getting
which
into
one's
those,
right, Michael?
Well, let me extrapolate my point further with the next scene. The next thing that happens is that in response to this, Anna commits suicide.
It's a great scene.
in front of
the whole
entire
congregation.
They're in
congregation.
church. She's sitting there with the scold's bridle on, and I love it because Joanna is like, "I can't believe you let him do this to you. I'd rather die than have
Yeah.
be treated this way." And Anna just gets up and leaves, and the Reverend's preaching, blah 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 blah, and then wham, she falls down from the church bell rope right there in the middle of everything.
The interesting scene for this, though, is how
People are like, whoa.
Well, this
Yeah.
is to continue my point. Like when that happens, not a single person in the congregation comforts Joanna at all. No one tries to shield her. No one tries to like comfort her or anything.
But it's because of what the Reverend does to pivot. Like, she did this to put him in his place and to basically shame him. But he pivots immediately and starts talking about how she has sinned and
She's in hell.
and that she's in hell, and basically you don't want anything to do with her because then you'll be in hell. And like, everybody's so goddamn afraid of hell.
Oh, yeah.
But now this opens the door for
Yeah, there's no one to stop him now.
which that did bother me. Like, that bothered me about Anna's character. Just because she had to have known what was going to happen.
She just gave up. I mean,
Yeah.
who can blame her?
That's true,
I mean,
yeah.
Christ.
We've
You know?
seen
I had a
all
problem
of
with
the-
it too, though, Michael. So I don't think you're alone in that feeling.
That just hurt me as a parent. You know, like how do you give up when you know that your child is
Sure, but I
going to
mean,
get raped?
how
now?
many psychoses
That's true,
are
yeah.
milling about all these people? I mean, she's probably not in her right mind.
Yeah.
You know, the way wearing a skull's bridle for who knows.
So
how
now
long.
the Reverend, though, decides, like, well, we can go forward with the ceremony. Thank God Anna's out of the way.
Yeah.
Jesus,
Oh,
really?
you're going to marry
putting
me.
One bit of ramp up too, because it's one of the most comical scenes in the movie. I
Oh,
think.
yeah, right.
As she's been treating Samuel and Wolf, they're finally to the point where they're kind of mobile again.
Yeah.
And Wolf's getting the old side eye
Yeah.
at Joanna.
Yeah.
And Samuel immediately is like, okay, this is going to be a problem. So now that he's mobile again, Wolf decides he's going to go to the outhouse. Since the family's gone, they just have Joanna there kind of tending things. And the second he leaves the barn, Samuel's like, I'm going to need some rope. And then it just kind of cuts to Wolf in the shitter, and you see a noose like slip down in over his neck.
Yep. And Kit Harington's on the back and he's pulling on it. And, the guy can't get any traction. He can't stand up. He's getting
Kills
choked.
him in the shitter.
I love it because he tries to like shoot out the back because he
Yeah.
assumes that's where he is. And then when it cuts, you see that he climbed up on the roof.
So he knows he would shoot in the back, yeah.
But he kind of levels with Joanna, and he's like, I had to do that.
And Joanna's watching the whole time. Because he opens the door and she's standing there watching. And
Well, and this is important because now the scene comes where the Reverend is going to try to finish the ceremony. He's trying to do it biblically, you know, and he's even said lot laid with his daughters.
yeah.
You know, he even quotes scripture, which is totally out of context.
Well, that's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, when he was quoting
Come
that,
at me.
when he was quoting that, I was like, "That's not the rest of the story." like, But yeah, he's gonna try to marry his daughter, and then
And
sleep
she's in the
with her.
skull's bridle, too. Like, he's whipped
Yeah.
her.
Well, not at
put her-
first. At first, when they're in the church, because the church scene happened first.
Well, he takes her to the church to do the whole marriage thing, and she's in the skull's bridle. Then.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But as he's getting ready to do as they're trying to complete the ceremony or whatever, Samuel busts in the door.
Yep.
Before this, though, I do have to say the fact that they fed Wolf to the pigs
Yeah,
Oh,
hide the
right.
was
evidence.
very
Yeah.
fucking brutal. But
He was an asshole. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
screw him. Screw Wolf.
But Samuel busts in the door, kind of saving the day or whatever, and you see that he's holding that
That bolt gun. thing.
bolt shooter.
And I really like what he says because the first thing because the Reverend has no clue who he is at all, and the first thing he says is, "That's a very special daughter that you have there."
Oh, and Joanna was trying to get with Kit Harington.
Yeah,
And he says, no. She says, I'm old enough. He says, I know, but we're not going to do this.
There's an interesting way that shot is framed too, because when he opens the door, the way he's framed, it looks like he has angel's wings. So you're already seeing from Joanna's eyes,
Right.
that she is viewing him as her guardian angel, like her savior or whatever, because she's been brainwashed so much by all this bullshit that's what she sees.
And this is very much the arrival of the hero. He's come to save the day.
And I really, really liked his monologue. Like, and he says something to him. He's like, "You're a right mean fucker, aren't you?"
Yeah.
Or something. He's like, my old man was a right fucker too. And he said, and he's a pervert like you are too.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, and what I do like is the way it was shot. I know Kit Harington's a smaller guy, and Guy Pearce, but he's towering over him. Like the way it was shot. But the fact that Samuel's still like, no,
Yeah.
like, fuck you. You're not going to do this. Well, the mistake he makes, he ends up grabbing the keys to the bridle and tosses it to Joanna so she can get it off her face. But the mistake he makes is that he then starts getting a little too close.
Too damn close.
And that's when you
The classic failing of all horror films as we know.
Yeah, that's when you see the Reverend grab his arm.
I like the scene a lot. Because you could tell on Samuel's face, he's like, you should not be this strong.
Yeah.
What the hell?
He's overpowered and he knows he's about to die.
Yeah, and he's pushing it toward his head, and bam, it goes off, and
then you're like, well, shit. There's the savior.
yep.
But then Joanna is able to...
And when he drops the what he like took from that shootout, which is a bag of gold.
Right.
And notably on the side of the bag it says bismuth. It has like the mining logo on it.
But Joanna is able to get free.
And runs off.
And runs off.
And that's where this chapter ends.
So now
we should be very clear though, I know we kind of glossed over it, but the minister does like whip her and rape her. That absolutely happens.
Right.
Very horrific moment.
Yes.
That threads through now all the connecting pieces from the prior 2 chapters. Correct. Why she's so afraid of him, what his deal is.
Yes.
And this is our final chapter, right?
Retribution.
Which brings us back to post chapter 1.
Yes. So it is...
Basically goes 3, 2, 1, 4.
It is Liz / Joanna with her daughter and stepson. They're off in the woods. It's snowy. They're heading up into the mountains.
It's shot very well. Like there's
It's beautiful.
Mist
yeah, there's this hazy mist.
obscuring everything, which is great for the tension because you have no idea where he might be.
Right.
You know?
Well, also, he goes full Terminator at this point.
He does, yeah.
And they hear him singing a couple times, too. So they know they're being tracked.
Which Martin Koolhoven mentioned in some sort of interviews that became a thing referenced on IMDb, that this is a reference to Night of the Hunter.
Yes, I got strong Night of the Hunter
Another
vibes.
Much better film.
Okay, all right. Look, Night of the Hunter is a much better film. There's no arguing that. Okay. But yeah, there's definitely strong Night of the Hunter vibes. I was thinking the same thing.
There's one song, was it Abide With Me, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
That's the one that continues to play through.
Right. They sing it in the
theme.
church every time, and then he's singing it at them as he's chasing them.
Liz, they stop. She gets out, and she tells them to go on. She has the rifle. She goes down the trail a bit, and she's just going to wait and shoot the fucker when he shows up.
Right.
But it's just his horse.
Yep.
As they continue on, though, they continue on down the trail. Like she's thwarted now. She didn't kill him. They continue on down the trail, and I forget what they see. What does Matthew see?
It's like a frozen dead ram.
Okay.
And
it's very foggy at this part. There's almost like no visibility.
The wagon's jostled. He drops the rifle.
But he goes out to check the ram, and then bam.
Well, he goes back to pick up the rifle.
Yeah, okay.
And then that's when he gets shot.
Yeah, bam. He gets shot. He goes down.
Screaming out. He's not dead yet.
But the whole time, Joanna's like, don't go out there. Don't do that. Or Liz now. I guess she's Liz. It's like, don't go out there. And he just, like, shoots him again. He ends up finishing him off.
Eventually he's dead.
Which we see, like, they're in a little clearing, and then he's in the tree line, and he has, like, a freaking scope on his rifle.
He does.
He's treating it, I mean, he treated Matthew just like he was game, you know. But he doesn't close in on Liz yet.
No.
She keeps going. She gets to her father-in-law's
Which in that
cabin.
first chapter, it's kind of out of context, but now it makes more sense, as he makes it clear that he doesn't just want to kill her.
Right.
Yeah,
he wants
at
to-
first
He wants to make her
we don't
suffer.
know, yeah.
And, yeah.
So at this point, we can see this is like a much deeper grudge than just like, I'm going to
'Cause
find you and kill
when
you.
he stabs Eli, he says, why? And she says, because she loves you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all about just torturing her.
And so I think I missed, who's the dude? Who's the old man?
He's the father of Eli.
Okay.
Yeah, it's her father-in-law.
Yeah, he was mentioned at the beginning.
And I knew he was some relation, but I missed like what exactly he was to her. But yeah, they get there, and this is when she does tell someone
Yep.
Yeah.
what's going on, and he tries to step in and do the right thing and protect her, and she's like, "No, this is mine. I have to do this."
Yeah, she's loading up a rifle, and she's sitting out front, like, keeping watch. This is also a scene that reminded me of Night of the Hunter a lot.
Yep. When she goes out on the porch.
Yeah. Does he start singing again?
He does.
She knows he's out there. She starts shooting, and he's like, you're not going to hit me at this range with that rifle.
That was a fun scene.
Yeah.
Because she does not fucking hesitate.
No.
She fires up and launches a couple at him, but obviously, she's not going to hit him.
And he says something about how he had been in the house.
Yeah, you left her alone.
He left her alone, but she was asleep, so she didn't see. So Liz runs back in, and the father-in-law's dead. He's been stabbed in the throat, pinned to the wall. She grabs her daughter, starts running off. The preacher's in the house. Basically, she's trying to escape at this point.
Yeah, they're trying to get out a window.
He's teleporting everywhere.
Well,
she's trying to get out of the window. Like they're running away from him. She gets her daughter out of the window. Now she's trying to go out of the window.
he gets pushed down, and some lamp oil falls on him.
Right. And so this is where we get a little bit of...
This is another one of those trigger warning moments to steal yourself.
He's got Liz tied up.
Yeah.
Okay, this part did bother me. And then he is whipping her daughter.
Yeah.
And then
It's clearly the build-up he's going to rape her. He even tells Liz,
Yeah. And again, credit to Guy Pearce for this despicable character and the way he does it.
He ends up like... I think the hardest part to see... And I even thought that too. Like, God, like... You have to be in character.
Where did he go to in his head space to do that?
Because he as he leans in on the girl, like he kind of like shudders and then kisses her face, like really.
It's so creepy,
horrible to watch. But this is where Liz/Joanna differs from her mom. Is she finds herself tied up and she sees that the only way she's going to be able to get out really is if she dislocates her arms. To raise her arms over this thing.
Is that possible, though?
Yeah.
Because her hands are tied.
I'll tell you what's not possible, though, is that the second she's done doing it, magically her arms are fine again.
Well, that's my problem.
I guess
that's my problem.
Once you've dislocated them, you have to set them back again.
Yeah, because they're going to be...
We didn't see her actually dislocate them. There are people flexible enough that I've seen people who can put their hands behind their back and pull them over top of their head and into their front.
What videos are showing up in your search history, pal?
I'll just say, on this scene, Tiffany
The ones you've sent me?
Tiffany did go medical nurse mode and was like, oh, that's not possible.
That bothered me.
Yeah.
That did take me right out. And this is a bad time to be taken right out.
It should have been a thing like she just cut herself or something.
It could have been anything.
Or what needed to happen is you needed to have some sort of a Chekhov's gun situation earlier in the film that she's hyper flexible of some sort. You know, like
double jointed thing. Yeah,
you needed something
that could have been explained at the whorehouse.
Yeah. You did need something to explain that she could do this.
Yeah, that part bothers me.
But she does. And I just viewed it more... Free. I viewed it more as
okay, whatever.
The whole things where
the adrenaline and...
Yeah, that kind of thing. So she does get herself free.
She grabs her rifle, and the preacher turns toward her. He's spouting more of his bullshit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
She lobs the lantern at him, right?
Yeah.
Sets him on fire. He barely even reacts. Keeps saying more of his fire and brimstone bullshit.
But his interesting line, his final line, is that everyone's afraid of the flames of hell, and it's not the flames of hell that's the punishment, it's the absence of love.
Right.
Which I do think is a really good line.
It is a good line.
And he delivers it so well, too. But that's like the final look into his, really fucked up, twisted mind. And then this is the fucking scene that took me out of it.
When she shoots him and he flies back out the window. Yeah.
Why? Why did you have to shoot him out of the window? We don't need a Michael Myers moment. And also that gun won't fucking do that. I know.
I know. I felt the same way.
I know. I did. I made it through a lot of stuff. And then I was like, come on, guys.
So then we get another time jump. And she's the boss of this sawmill.
Yeah, she's built a sawmill out there around her father-in-law's cabin.
She's found a community again. Her daughter is obviously adored and loved by some of the workers and stuff like that in the healthy, good way.
Yeah. They're treating her like a daughter.
Yeah.
They're all looking after her.
You can tell it's almost like a family in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then who shows up? Nathan from the beginning.
Which, when it showed up and they're focusing on him and the music's kind of building, I turned to Tiffany and then she goes, who the fuck's that guy?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I recognized him.
I knew who it was, but I was this is... this whole part at the end is very ham-fisted to me.
The ending really killed this movie for me.
So it's Nathan, and he's got a posse with him.
He is the sheriff now. He tells quickly that the Reverend told him to go to Bismuth, where he became a deputy. Then he became a sheriff. And going through the sheriff stuff, he found old wanted poster for Elizabeth. And
Who's wanted because she killed Frank.
yeah, and there's like this flashback where they show her knifing Frank. And
Like
then
two seconds before she ran in to save Joanna from the Reverend, she killed Frank.
Elizabeth did say she was going to kill him. That was always something she claimed she was going to do.
But this scene really bothered me.
And the funniest thing is, like, he has the wanted poster, and it clearly has the image of Elizabeth Grundy on it. But he just goes like, well, your name's Elizabeth Grundy, and you're missing a tongue, so how many can there be?
Well, also, he wants revenge on her.
And it's like, she looks nothing like... But it's the way
It doesn't matter.
The way he frames it, though, he frames it like it's all about, like, justice, and, like, now, like, justice has come for
because
her.
he's a self-righteous son of a bitch, but he just wants to punish her. He doesn't care if it's right or not.
He ends up arresting her, and he takes her off. They're on a ferry going down the river. And Liz now is faced with, does she go and meet her death this way, or does she take her chances on her own?
And she looks back to Sam at the shore.
And she's being, I mean, you can tell she's cared for.
Yeah.
Like all of the workers.
She's not abandoning her child.
No, all of the workers treat her like a daughter or niece or, like a family member. They're all playing with her and, being very nurturing. And so she just smiles and kind of falls back off the ferry and floats down into the water. She's chained. She's shackled like hands in.
Yeah, there's no way to survive. They're even shooting at her and stuff.
And you don't see her drown, but then we get a narration.
Yep. It time skips again.
We see an older Sam.
Yeah. Well, we get this narration while she's drowning. And then we get the time skip. We see an older Sam.
She's got a child now.
And she basically, in her narration, is saying, that she was a strong woman. She was a fighter. And I always wonder if she's still looking out for me. And then she looks off into the woods as if her mom somehow fucking survived it. I don't know.
That's not the impression I got at all.
I thought that was more of like an ominous...
Like he's still out there. Like the Reverend's out there.
Oh, I didn't get that.
I got a much more ominous.
I took it that way.
Well, honestly, I was pissed at this point of the movie.
Oh, me too.
Okay, well, we've wrapped it up. We've wrapped up the plot.
I was pissed here because
Let's go.
I think you told I think they told an interesting story. It wasn't a pleasant story, but it was interesting, and I think it's a story about abuse and trauma.
Which we already know from The Nightingale, which we've covered. You can do that and do it well. And even with all of the reprehensible things that's depicted there, it's a meaningful film.
Right. There's no need for the last scene. There's no need for you should have changed, you didn't even change your name.
Yeah.
I didn't see any need for that. I just felt like it was abnormally cruel as a story device.
I didn't like it because I was trying to think about the themes and the message of this film. And I think when you take that into account, it left me with a weird feeling about the movie.
I felt like that we could have had, and I know that it's not, maybe it wasn't the writer's intention, but I think you could have had a survivor story that could have been a little more meaningful than what was then ended with.
No, I can see that. The ending didn't bother me particularly because I kind of like those kind of dark endings.
Yeah, you sick fuck.
But I can see your point. I can see.
I just didn't feel that last scene really took me out of it because I just didn't feel it was necessary. And I also really didn't like the flashback where she's like, oh my God, she killed Frank and then came in and helped me. That really pissed me off. It was too coincidental.
And it was too much to throw in that late in the movie.
It didn't bother me.
To me, Liz's story was done. She did what she was supposed to do in her story, but I guess I don't know. I guess it's still her former life coming, but it's also almost punishing her for a quote
You did it
quote
this time.
sinful life. You know,
Yeah.
So let me thread some stuff I've set up across our discussion on this.
Go for it.
'Cause this is the heart of my anger at this film.
Yes.
Would you guys say that this is the message of this film, the concept of it, would you say it's pro-feminist? That it's empowering to women all. This is maybe not a conversation we should even have because we're probably not the right people to talk about this, but...
I didn't think it was empowering at all.
I think it does a good job of showing how women can be treated and how horrible it is and how men can get away with it. And sometimes that in itself, just showing that and showing how horrible it is, can be feminist because it's
showing
it still happens.
showing very real issues that
Right.
existed then that still exist
and still
now.
exists in a lot of places. And
So I think that is true, but I think when you look at the messaging of this film and like where it goes in the plot, so obviously Joanna is like circumstance to her environment. She was unfortunately the daughter of this reverend. She escapes that to then be at the whorehouse at the mercy of Frank and everything that he's doing. And it's in that moment where those parts kind of clash together, and she decides to cut out her tongue. As I said up before, she quote unquote loses her voice. She's no longer physically able to speak. Maybe she can, Michael, I don't know, but she chooses not to. That consequently in that first chapter creates a lot of problems because she never vocalizes anything to Eli or anyone else that can kind of like narrate what's going on. You're right, there may be these things where like societally they're not going to believe her no matter what. To me, it seems like Eli was a good guy, and like from the start, if she had shown up and been like, hey, I'm not Liz, but here's this story, and I just want a decent life, I feel like he would have still stayed with her. I don't think there would have been any weirdness with that.
well,
But the thing is that she's never able to like vocalize this issue with the Reverend, and it leads to everyone in the film like being turned against her along the way, which like furthers the problem. And I almost had this thought, like, when it first happened in that second chapter, and they kind of bring up that she's wanting to cut her tongue out, and then the doctor can't do it, I thought, well, like, okay, she's gonna, like, pretend that she can't talk and just pretend to be mute. And I thought it was gonna build this thing where, like, in the final chapter, when it all loops back around, there'll be this triumphant moment where she, like, speaks and actually vocalizes again, and, like, speaks up against the Reverend.
You get a final like gun cocks.
Right.
Fuck you. Flies out the window on fire.
And it doesn't even have to be like that, like pulpy, but instead, no, she does remove her tongue. She never has her voice. She never gets a chance to say anything or respond, and she never speaks up for anything. Like even when Nathan comes to her, she never tries to like explain or fight against that. She just gives herself over to like the inevitability of the situation. So in a lot of ways, like I think whether it was the intention or not, to me it felt like the message of the film that was like, this time and this place was like a world where women couldn't exist in any way where they're free unless it was like underneath the control of a man, and the only escape is to just die.
You also have to look at the fact that we're comparing this to Nightingale, which was written and directed by a woman.
And this was better written and executed.
And this was written and directed by a man.
I'm not going to argue that Nightingale is a better movie than this.
But
I'm
like,
not going to argue that at all.
And then to me, like, I guess then the push...
two different voices there.
The push to defend that is then to say, well, like, the West was like this. And it's like, yes, it was true. But then also we have these people like, there's like Annie Oakley, Calamity Jane. There are these like famous women of the West that were very independent.
But by and large, most women weren't like that. But
right.
To address your issues, I propose that perhaps her muteness was also a psychological effect. Not only could she not really form words very well, but it's also possible that all the trauma she went through, everything she had to do, perhaps it's just, psychological.
And if it was, then that's still like my point is like if there was that triumphant moment where she finally speaks again.
Well, she's not going to say much.
But that's like a bigger payoff to me in a way, to the meaning of like if this film is like feminist in a way where it's like showing these things, and it is like the conclusion at the end is Sam says like, my mother was a strong woman. And I'm like, she says that, but from what the film has shown us, I don't know, other than the fact that she endured all these things, I don't feel like the film told us that.
Sometimes just enduring is strength.
I felt like the film, like all it said was like, well, this is shit. She's in a shitty situation. She runs a lot. She never really does too much to fight back about it or to speak out against things. Mm-hmm. And then she dies.
Well, to answer your second point about why didn't she tell this stuff to Eli, victims of trauma don't always want to share everything. They want to leave all that behind. They don't know if they're going to be accepted. If she told Eli all this...
But she immediately knows when the Reverend shows up what's going to happen.
But what is she going to say?
Well,
really, what is she going to say? This is my father who I thought I killed, who raped me?
Yeah. I think one of my issues with the movie, and I've talked to you about this before, Jason, with certain horror films that I don't care for that much. Like I've watched them, but I don't want to watch them again, is when things are just mean. Mm-hmm. Like when it's a mean-spirited film. This was mean to me. Like it was realistic, but I also felt like it was just mean.
I could see that. But to me, personally, I don't think it was mean in that way. It's showing horrible things, no doubt. But I don't think it's... I mean, it is a bit of an exploitation film. It's an exploitation film dressed up as a respectable drama.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because I guess I tend to not really care for... I like the bleak stuff, but I tend to not care I tend to don't like it when there's not... I don't know, like you almost you're yearning for that like moment where she gets to rise up and like take over. Jason's like, fuck that shit.
Well, see, like,
burn it all down.
I don't mind a mean-spirited film as long as there is like a sense of payoff in the end, and it doesn't have to be a triumphant payoff. It just has to be like a payoff that to me felt meaningful.
And I think for me, if it wasn't for that last scene, this movie would have been very different for me. If it wasn't for that last moment.
Okay. I could see that.
And I'm not sure that was needed.
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. Like, it could have gone both ways, and I'm fine with it. But I'm also...
What would have been better?
People might call me pessimistic, but I'm pragmatic. And I could see that happening, because life sucks. Shitty things happen.
Right. But what I think probably would have fit the narrative better was had you, instead of, like you guys said, with Sam looking over her shoulder thinking the Reverend's still out there. I think it would have probably been more fitting with the narrative to have Liz always wondering. Like, that she's raising her daughter now.
Oh, yeah.
But she's always wondering, is he dead?
Is he still out there or not?
And that kind of carries through that same theme of trauma and PTSD.
Sure, but that could also be... I mean, let's not forget that Sam, as a little girl, was traumatized.
She was, yeah.
So she's still... I mean, this...
But this isn't Sam's story.
It's how abuse is... Yeah, but still, it's passed on from generation to generation a lot of times,
So but I don't think the film's trying to make that point so much.
I mean, I kind of took that away from it.
Well, I think you're wrong.
for like a 2-second scene that they tag on at the last minute.
Also, the whole thing, and okay, here's the crux of this movie for me. It's the only way this movie works for me.
Are you going to talk about the fan theory that's supposed to explain this movie better that I have a lot of problems with?
We'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
But Jason, did you know that everyone on Exegol were... Sorry.
No, I didn't know that. Was that in the movie?
No, it's in the novelization.
Okay, wait, maybe we need to talk about this fan theory.
Okay.
As you put it, that we need to talk
I
about.
didn't...
I'm not
I
sure
thought
what
you were
you're talking
joking.
about.
I didn't
there
know
really
there's...
It was on the IMDb, and it was mixed in with all the stuff that was like just talking up Koolhoven as how awesome he is. So it might be something that he himself wrote on there. I'm sorry to this guy that I'm just fucking ragging on you.
As if he's going to listen and be like, oh, these 3 guys in Kentucky hate me.
No, but it talked about the Reverend, and they're like, notably, if you really pay attention, you will notice in chapters 1 and chapters 4, his eyes are more dark, almost a black. But in chapters 2 and chapters 3, his eyes are a lighter color.
Do you think he's possessed?
And that might suggest that he died in the fire of the Inferno.
He is dead.
And that in the later chapters, he's just a demon that's pursuing her.
He is. That's the only way this movie works. It's High Plains Drifter.
Nothing in this film gives you any kind of evidence or crux to back that up.
She fucking slices his throat open. He looks dead.
At no other point did they give us any hint of anything supernatural going on in this film. This is where I said this is like...
Does there need to be anything else supernatural going on?
I'm kind of sitting here in shock that that Jason, this was in your mind, because I'm like, this is bullshit. This is a bullshit excuse.
He's dead. He's obviously dead. He's supposed to be dead.
Michael, not to bully you. This to me is Hold the Dark again, where it's like, oh, well, there's the 2 wolf spirits in Norse mythology, and obviously that's what it is. No, it's not in the film. There's no basis for it.
It's in the film. It is completely in the film. Okay.
I'm not sure how I feel. I think I feel dumb right now that I haven't seen something.
Don't feel dumb. Okay.
And the experts that put this on IMDb say that that that's what it is, because in his sermons he's talking about being to hell. And so clearly he's a demon or brought back from the dead. Because,
there was also the line that Jesus said after he was risen from the grave.
My thing is that any fire and brimstone preacher all say that same shit all the time, always. And that's nothing special.
I mean, that's...
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you and say that's the only way this movie works.
We see her slash his throat. He is bleeding profusely. He falls down. He is not moving. She moves his body over by the bed, still motionless, sets the bed on fire, presumably it spreads and probably burns the whole place down, or at least half of it. He looks dead to me. I have no problem accepting that he died in that moment. And then when he's a demon. He's a spirit.
No.
Here's my issue with that, though.
That's the only way it works, because when he's tracking her in that last chapter out in the woods in the snow, you talk about him teleporting. Mm-hmm. That fits. How is he going to survive out there in the snow, even without his horse?
But that can just be poor editing.
Or he's fucking dead. He's a demon. He's a spirit. That's why he doesn't even react when he's on fire.
If he had poofed into smoke after she killed him or something, or when she shot him out the window, she looked out the window and he
That's why Sam, he's still there. He's still out there.
That almost makes me more mad, though, if I think of it that way, because it negates her trauma.
It does, and I also feel like that makes a weird messaging about the religious...
How does it negate trauma?
It negates the trauma that now she's being sought by a vengeful demon.
Sam, the daughter?
No, it negates Liz's trauma. Yeah. That basically, all the trauma that's been inflicted on her, I think if you take the supernatural route, that's not really been talked about or present within the film, I feel like it negates everything that, let's say, real Reverend, alive Reverend did to her. Just because now it's become a supernatural thing, and he's coming back from the dead. I
think it's a metaphor for trauma. I think it's a metaphor for the...
I don't think this film's classy enough to make that kind of metaphor.
Let's call this dude. Let's get him on Skype. What did you mean?
I'm not saying this movie is a classic. I'm not saying it's even a very good movie. But I see these themes. This is what I'm getting from the movie. It's just to me it is that trauma. It's how it lives. He's that dark spirit that it won't go away no matter what you do. Because sometimes you're not going to get over your trauma. Sometimes life is horrible, and the only way out is to die.
But this isn't the Babadook. He's clearly there, and other people see him, other people interact with him.
He's a freaking demon. He's a ghost. He's a spirit.
He walks in the church just fine. He doesn't catch on fire from walking in the church.
Because God's not real. What's he going to do? He's going to stop him?
Okay, so God's not real, but a demon is real.
Yeah.
I think this might hit
But God doesn't care.
I think this might hit my Hold the Dark moment, where I would say...
It's the only way the movie works.
I would say that is fine if that's what makes the movie work for you.
Look at High Plains Drifter. There's a supernatural element there without any other supernatural things happening. It doesn't have to be in a world of ghosts and spirits.
It feels more implied there, though, just in the way it's presented.
It's pretty obvious, I think.
But I think if that... I won't say that anybody's wrong or anybody's right about it.
I will.
I won't say that
I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be dead.
But I will say, if that does make the movie work for you, then it does. That's what made Hold the Dark work for me. Mm. So
I think more than any other movie we've covered, I desperately want people to write in if you have seen this movie and tell us what you think.
If you hate it, if you love it, if you don't give a shit, let us know.
Is he Schrodinger's Reverend? Is he dead and not dead at the same time?
It's only when the observer takes note of the Reverend.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess when you present those things, if you were trying to convince me of that argument, I could say, okay.
I think there's enough evidence in the movie to support that hypothesis.
If I've learned anything, I can reject any evidence that's presented to me, that's whether it's sound or scientific or not, and I can say it's what I want to do. So, no, I don't. I'd have to...
When did you become a Republican?
Don't you even say that out loud. I would have to, with that in mind, I'd probably have to go back and rewatch this movie again, with those thoughts.
You're not going to do that.
But I really don't want to do that. So I'm just going to say, go with your theory, Jason.
Whatever lets you sleep
I'm not sure that
I think the movie supports it.
I'm not sure that I buy that theory, but I don't want to go back and rewatch it to try to prove your theory. So you win. Okay. You win by sheer
laziness.
No, not laziness.
Unwillingness to watch the movie again.
Maybe if I didn't have to watch it on Tubi though, and ads.
I watched it on Showtime, so
it
was a brisk 2.5 hours.
It was more like 3 hours for me.
I think it was for me too.
Now, I do have a legitimate question. I wonder if that affects the way you feel about a movie with the ads and shit. It has to affect it in some way.
Didn't really mind the ads actually because it was a break from the film.
But No, I'm serious. I think that's a legitimate question.
You know what though? Props to Tubi. The way I know they don't plan their commercial breaks, but just the way it happened to like hit with this film.
Was it in between the chapters?
I would say 3/4 of the breaks were during fade to blacks.
Okay.
And it just felt normal.
Maybe there's just a lot of fade to blacks in this movie.
Well, there are, because I actually have a note about that, is that the chapter breaks and some of the other fades, they were shorter originally, and someone on the production staff suggested that they'd add a few seconds to each of those.
That was a good idea.
Especially in the chapter breaks, because they said there needs to be a time for people to stop and breathe for a second.
Right.
Before you go into the next thing.
Plus, it also subconsciously tells you this is a different part of the story. So
I thought that was interesting.
yeah, it is. That was a good call on their part.
Some other fun facts I have. This was the second most expensive Dutch film made at the time, after Black Book from 2006.
What the fuck is Black Book?
I've never seen it, don't know anything about it. Karis Van Houten was in both.
Oh, cool.
Brimstone dropped to third in 2020 when The Forgotten Battle became the second most expensive film.
I forgot about that one.
I also don't know that film. We should talk about critical reception on this film, because I think that's interesting. When it debuted in film festivals, especially in Europe, it got mostly just praise, and a lot of journalists really... talked it up, and it was a big deal. It got a really great critical reception.
Europeans love dark shit.
It came to America in the States and played at festivals, and there was a lot of criticism from mainstream critics.
Shocking.
A lot of more negative feedback and reception. But what surprised me was all on the basis of like morality and moral grounds, which we've gone over this countless times. This whole like puritanical.
The movie is not endorsing the actions of the Reverend. If you're watching this movie and you're siding with him, if you're titillated by this movie,
got a problem.
You've got problems.
Yeah,
this movie is not trying to titillate.
No, this movie should make you feel terrible.
This isn't some Nazi exploitation.
And it shocked me because with so much low hanging fruit, I'm surprised that they just went with morality.
Well, that's America. All the violence is fine, but the morality.
But overall, if you kind of like aggregate everything, the one thing that shines through is that whether people hated it or not, they kind of all agree the acting's really great.
Acting's great. I think it's shot really well.
I do think that's
it's
worth
a
bringing
good-looking
up.
movie.
I'm just very conflicted on this. This is the only movie I think that we've ever watched that I'm just truly conflicted
I think
on.
we're all in different places on this movie.
Yeah.
I'm in purgatory with this movie.
And to cycle back to it on the genre, I don't think the fact that it's in the Old West really... Like, you could set this somewhere else, I think. You questioned that, Michael. I think you could.
I don't know.
I think, I have to go with Michael on this one.
I think any rural place anywhere in the world...
I wouldn't go that far. I think there has to be, like, the remoteness to it. There has to be that lack of technology. The fervent Christian beliefs that most people have,
They tell us when this time... It's basically turn of the century. It's like 1901, I think.
It's just the latter days of the Old West.
It spans some time.
Yeah.
It's probably like 1890s and 1900s.
I don't know. I think it would be quite... Again, you'd have to... I think to see if that would truly work, you'd have to like set this movie in somewhere else, and then I'd have to watch it again, and I don't want to do that.
And it does play with some of those Western tropes, too. Like, you think Kit Harington's going to be the heroic cowboy.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think that when he came in like 3/4 of the way through the film.
I think a lot of people would think
I think I was fine. When he finally showed up, I was like, there's Jon Snow.
You've got the whole whorehouse thing, that old Western trope.
I'm glad that Robert Pattinson didn't
Yeah.
play this, though, because I don't think I could see him... I don't think that's an appropriate character for him.
After you've seen The Lighthouse and movies like
No.
that.
I think he's above that character. Like,
Yeah.
I think that the dialogue that he had, maybe Pattinson would have done something different with it.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad, but it felt more right for Kit Harington in a way.
Probably because he played Jon Snow and he's supposed to be kind of heroic.
I think
Man of honor.
I think it did subvert a little bit. You know, like you're expecting him to be a badass, and he's not.
He's promptly, swiftly killed. That was very Games of Thrones.
I do think that the
Can you
earliest
say that again?
Games of Thrones.
Thank you.
that earliest chapter is the strongest to me, and I almost wish that was just a film to itself, and we had more time with Samuel and Joanna, and maybe even more time with the Reverend to get more of like...
I'm not going to argue this movie isn't bloated.
It undersells him in a way, because it's like, we get it, he's like the fervent, crazy zealot. But even if there was just a little more time spent on like how he gets to that point, almost, like, I don't know. I would care more to see that than this weird bloated mess that they've made.
Okay.
Well, I think we've all pretty much made our opinions of the film known.
Let's wrap it up.
But
What's our final thoughts?
Final thoughts.
Let's go with finals.
Michael?
I'm really conflicted on this because I didn't hate the movie at all. Like, I actually did like a good portion of it, and I think it probably would have sat a lot better with me were it not for that final scene, just because that didn't work for me.
Okay.
I see how it does work for people. It just, for me, it didn't. So I think I'm going to land on like a 2.5.
Okay.
I'm really not upset that I watched it because I think that it does tackle a lot of issues that people don't have the balls to tackle. And I don't think it cheapens those things too, which I think is really important. I don't think it glosses over them. It really hits hard in the places that it should. Superbly acted. I think this is a pretty fucking fantastic Guy Pearce.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Performance. Everybody in it's really, really good. I just don't think I want to watch it again. But not just because I didn't like it, just because I don't want to go back there.
Sure. Right. No.
I've seen it.
It's like, how many times do you need to watch Cannibal Holocaust?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, well,
So, yeah, what's that? Basically, every time it's on a new medium, just to see how it's restored better.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah.
so yeah, I think 2.5 for me. But
Okay. An average film. Then.
if you were the type of if you were a listener that
If you're a dark sicko,
if you were a listener that
God, I hope some of you are.
that chooses things that you watch based on differing opinions of them, like if you think like, oh, Michael likes it, so
I'm not going to watch it.
maybe I should check. I will say be careful with this one in your psyche and your mental state.
Yeah, I mean, if this sort of thing bothers you, at the least, don't watch this movie. Just don't do that to
it's
yourself.
not worth it.
Yeah.
Performances aside, so I would say this one 2.5, but be careful.
Okay.
I guess I'll go next because we know I'm
I
coming.
think mine would be more positive.
I'm coming
than
in
yours.
hot, and I think
saw your letterbox review already.
That text message was so funny earlier. When Jason just messages our group and he's like, "Well, Dustin rated it on Letterboxd." Uh-oh.
And I was like, oh, maybe I should wait to do those till after we record the episode. Another thing I want to bring up, because it just came to me, I forgot to put it in my notes. There was talk when this came out, again on IMDb, it seemed to be from the director, so I don't know if this was from an interview or what. But they talked about how this was like a great send-up of like the spaghetti western of old. And that in... among like Dutch films, they refer to it as like it was a Dutch word, so I can't remember it, but it was like a mashed potatoes western because it was like their version of a spaghetti western. I just want to say there is nothing about this film in any way, shape, or form that is like a spaghetti western, and that is fucking ridiculous to even suggest that.
I mean, I agree with that. I'm not getting a spaghetti western vibe at all. No. I don't know who said that. I don't know if that was the director, but no, it's not.
That's just blatantly you're wrong.
Just want to throw that in there. I did not like this film. It's well acted.
What? I'm so shocked. I'm clutching my pearls.
There's good visuals. There's good ideas here, but I think in the totality of what it is, it's terribly bloated. For the runtime it has and to be so bloated, I don't think they spend it on the right things. Like that second chapter with the Inferno, that chapter is so long. I didn't time each part, but I feel like that's maybe the longest chapter, and it probably shouldn't have been, but it is. And then, like I said, I've already got into it with you guys, but it's like everything about the conclusions of where this film goes, and it's like its themes and its messages and its ideas. I like a dark film, and I'm fine with something that's mean-spirited as long as there is like a payoff in the end, and it doesn't have to be a triumphant or like the heroes win. I'm fine with like a downer ending, but I don't know, man. It's like it bothered me a lot in this film because I felt like it wanted to be like, yes, she was a strong woman, but I'm like, really the film, like, I hate to just say like this film was misogynistic, but that's kind of where I feel in the end when I think back on it now. And it's because of how they've structured the plot. Like, there's other ways you could have like morphed this thing to go in a different direction with it, but the way it is, I just very much don't like it. So 1 star, fuck this film.
Wow. All right.
I'd like for that to be Dustin's what he says for every 1 star. 1 star, fuck this film.
Oh, and I hate it. I mean, if you enjoyed it and if you liked it, that's cool and that's fine. Everyone, thinks different, processes things different, finds different things that they appreciate or dislike about a film. And for me, this film and the choices they've made and its execution very much repulsed me.
1 star, fuck this film.
Okay. So I don't 1 star it lightly, I should say.
All right, no,
there is thought behind this.
Sure. As far as the misogyny thing goes, I don't get that. I don't think the movie is misogynistic. I think it portrays misogyny.
I guess to me, I would say, to clarify, I think this film is clumsily told, the story. And that they want it to be like a indictment of misogyny, but in a lot of ways it kind of does that clumsily, I think.
Do you feel like this would work better as a play?
No. Is that a serious question?
It was, but it's not anymore.
No, continue your thought. I'm sorry. That was horribly mean of me.
I don't know. I just kind of wonder if this would work. Never mind. Just go on with your thing. I don't have anything to defend that anymore.
Please continue, Jason.
Yeah.
I'm
just going to stay over here.
Again, this was a blind pick by me, which I may not be doing in the future.
Well, it's good to experiment and try new things.
I agree.
I enjoyed it.
I like picking something none of us have seen sometimes.
I mean, I didn't. I'm not gonna say I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the blind pick aspect to where everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Uh-oh."
I could see all your complaints, and I share some of them. Mm-hmm. However, I do think at the end of the day, I think it's a good movie. It is not a great movie. It doesn't need to be 2.5 hours long. However, was never really very bored. I was always pretty interested in what was going on. The performances, like you said, are great. It's a good-looking movie.
I wish that she hadn't cut her tongue out because I want there to be more dialogue with Dakota Fanning.
Yes.
Because the second chapter, which was too long to me, hearing her like talk and interact with people,
yeah,
very well done.
But I think also being deprived of her voice, I thought she was very good at acting then too. You know, my final thoughts on this movie, I think it really could have been a lot better. Because it was really irritating me at the end. Mm-hmm. Because the way she does her arm thing, that was really fucking annoying. Because I think her arms would be useless if that really happened.
Right, there's like a million ways you could shoot that.
And I'm like, why are you trying to escape this house? Why don't you just like hold up in a corner with your rifle and shoot the fucker? But then once I'm like, oh, because he's dead, it won't do any good.
Allegedly.
That's my takeaway. I think the movie supports it. The evidence is there. I liked it a little bit better after I accepted that fact. I would give it... I'd give it 3.5 stars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ballsy.
Okay, well, I'm sending this movie to purgatory from now. Like, we're done with it. So we have one more.
We have one more.
In our Western block, and then we will get to another
listener episode.
Now, something that I'm looking forward to, because I think we're going to have 3 very different Westerns here.
And listen, I'm in a rock and a hard place because I shit on Silverado, I shit on Brimstone. Whatever I bring, you guys are just predisposed.
No, because I don't bring my,
So I've constructed a conundrum for the two of you.
Oh, are you giving us a choice?
Yes, where it's going to be hard for you to want to hate this film. Because it stars a favorite of the podcast, Franco Nero.
I knew you were going to bring it, Franco Nero.
And the obvious answer was to do Django because neither of you have seen it, but that's like, top level spaghetti Western film. So I didn't want to do that one because it's been so covered and so many other people that are probably more eloquent than us have talked about it.
No, I'm sure.
So I had to go that next layer lower, So what I have picked for our final film is from 1976, directed by Enzo G. Castellari, and it is Keoma. It was one of the waning Twilight era spaghetti westerns. It gets a little into like the acid western vibe, and I wanted to get to that at some point. So
okay,
we'll see.
I don't think I'm familiar with this one. Interesting.
It's kind of a deeper cut. A lot of people that are really into spaghetti westerns talk it up a lot, but
I mean, you've seen it.
I've seen it. I love it. It's got some weird particulars to it that I wonder how they'll land for you guys.
Okay, I guess we'll find out.
There's a bit of a musical aspect to the film. It's not a musical, but there are. It's got the whole like title song theme vibe going on.
Okay, well that sounds very spaghetti westerny.
Mm-hmm. And how can I watch it?
So it is on Tubi for sure.
Okay.
It's got a Blu-ray that was restored by Arrow, so I think it's on the Arrow player. So those are your avenues. It might be on other stuff too. Cool. It seems to be pretty spread out. Should be easy to track down.
All right. Well, this has certainly been an interesting episode.
Oh my god. Please write in if you've seen this film and let us know what you think.
Yeah, we really want to know.
Please join the discussion.
And there are no wrong answers.
So until next time, continue please tweeting, writing, sending messages, whatever that voodoo is that you do, please do it.
Yes.
Until next time, you've been listening to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.